Oh man, it's been a hot minute. But we're back. It's Lopez Radio, episode 357. You found us hopefully on lopezradio.com or wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow the show at Lopez Radio. And you can check me out on Twitch if you want to. It's twitch.tv/ you guessed it, Lopez Radio. I stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Joining me today is a gentleman who I've been wanting to have on the show for quite a while. He's a fellow streamer. He's someone that is just a whole lot of fun to watch. You can check him out on twitch.tv/ Fudge. You can also check out his music. He actually did the intro to this show. It's Spuntastic on Bandcamp. I'll have links to all of his stuff on lopezradio.com. Fudge, welcome in, man. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing really well, man. Doing really well.
Good to be here. Finally get around to do this.
Yeah, I feel like we've been trying to talk it through for a while, but we finally got it going, and I'm really excited about it.
Man.
I've been having leading up to this, I was telling you right before we started, I've been trying to run around and get a bunch of shit done at the house and stuff like that, and I've been struggling lately to I thought it was sleep related, but I've been struggling to focus on things and I guess just kind of get my shit in order, I guess is more like it. But I used to take this stuff called Alpha Brain, and it's kind of like a cognitive nootropic, just something that helps you kind of focus. It's all natural stuff. It's nothing that's like a drug or anything like that. But I almost took one before we started, and it's kind of like this stuff you mix into water, and it's kind of peach flavored. And I smelled it and I gagged. For some reason it's making me sick. So I was like, I can't take this. I was literally about to call you and I was like, I can't take this. I don't know what to do. Have you ever taken anything like a nootropic or any kind of thing for cognitive function?
No, not really. There was a time when I was in university, a lot of friends of mine were taking what's the word of it? The usual drug that you give to people who have ADHD to focus more.
Adderall.
And Adderall, yeah. And friends of mine who were studying with me at the time, they were taking this in order to just, get more shit done and be more focused for a longer period of time, even though they didn't really need it. And there was a whole almost like a black market going on in our friends group, because it's a bit difficult to get it here in Germany. I don't know how it is in America.
But
I always refused it, because I thought to myself, if I can't focus without any enhancements of some sorts, then there's something else going on, and I need to figure that shit out first.
Yeah.
So that was kind of always my approach to this.
I think, I don't know, like I said before, I don't think it's sleep related, because I've gotten pretty good sleep lately. Not, whatever that even means, but more than what I usually get. And I think it's just more so you get so many things on your plate and going between work and, creative projects you might be working on, and just, the day-to-day things of just keeping, normal shit working in your life. And I guess it just
piling up,
stuff just kind of piles up after a while. And I don't know, I guess it was just kind of I was, usually it's coffee kind of gets me feeling normal, but today it just wasn't doing it. I was like, oh, I don't know. I had a girlfriend one time that took a lot of that stuff that you were talking about, like Adderall. She took something called Concerta, which was like a time release kind of Adderall type thing. And I had done that before. I'd taken it before. It wasn't like a habitual thing, but we would go and go out and party and go out to the bar, and I'd have to work super early, because I did merchandising, retail merchandising, and you get a lot of that shit done before the store opens. So it's 6 a.m. call time kind of thing. And so I just pop one of those, and dude, it's like you're doing your life's work. You're like, this price tag, look how fucking good that thing looks on the shelf. It was so dumb. But later I would talk to other friends who had partied a lot harder than me. I had never done something like coke or anything like that, but they were like, it's basically just legal coke. And I was like, oh, okay, no wonder you feel wonderful when you're on Adderall or something like Concerta, because you're just, I don't know, your brain's just it's firing a mile a minute, but it's also focused on what it's doing. It's really weird. You would think you'd be scattered all over the place, and you're really not. But it's very cocaine like from what I've been told.
Yeah, it's crazy how you almost feel, I don't know, but you almost feel the need to resort to these things depending on what you do, obviously. But in our time, in our age, where everything like gets accelerated and more and everything needs to be more effective and more productive, you feel like you as a human being have to start becoming also more and more productive and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I can totally see, like, I never gave anyone shit for like doing the Adderall thing. For example, my friends who would do it and then like do 10-hour sessions in the university and just get shit done because you're being pressured into this almost. So yeah,
Yeah, and they
almost dangerous.
right. It's you know what it kind of reminds me of. I've never talked to anybody who kind of grew up in that culture or in with that kind of pressure, but you hear a lot about that with Japanese college students and business
Yeah,
professionals, where it's like the pressure is so high that it's something you can't imagine. Where they're working so much that some of them have beds in their office and stuff like that. I can't imagine that level of pressure at all.
yeah, I heard that too. That in Japan, I think it was, they just put their little beds under their desks and then they sleep like an hour or so and then they go back to work just to maximize the efficiency of their day and stuff like that.
I just, I don't know, man. I get, I guess it's different when when it's like a labor of love. Like when I first was going into radio and like it had already kind of reached a point, the industry where it was really tough to even get in the door. Um, but like when it's a labor of love and something where you're like, I really, really want to do this, I think it's different because it doesn't feel like you're working that hard. But when it's like,
Absolutely.
yeah, when I need to do this for just for a paycheck, I'm not really enjoying it, but it pays me and it helps me support my family or just support whatever my habits are, be it buying audio equipment or doing whatever. It's a little different, You're just kind of like, yeah, I'm paid well, but at what cost? What am I losing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's for me. It's the same for me. Like I can sit on the PC and do like, be it, I don't know, creating scenes in OBS, for example, like
Mm,
just a simple example, and I can sit here for hours upon hours and just work on this and try to get it done, try to get it perfect, figure stuff out, learn new things via YouTube, watch videos, and all of that, and it doesn't really bother me at all having sat here for 6 hours and get, for example, this cam setup that you're seeing right now, get this done and figure stuff out.
mhm,
It always feels good when you see the fruits of your work and you can use it then in
mhm,
the end, compared to like you're dragging yourself to a job because you have to, and you don't really care too much about what you're doing at your job,
mhm.
and then the time expands too and it drags on, and like, yeah, I absolutely get that.
Yeah, and like you come home like you're like let's say like so I work in IT and I'm just kind of like it's very rare that I come home and just like man I really got that person's printer going and it feels good it's you don't there's very rare moments where you even feel like that um so it's interesting to deal with because too the thing I've been struggling with lately is um the speed at which a week goes by. I'm just kind of like I'll right now they've got me because of the pandemic, we're me and one other person are kind of revolving in the office week to week. So I'll work from home one week and then I'll be in the office the next week. And like well, I know why it feels like the weeks that I'm working from home fly by because it's kind of nice. You got your own space. You're able to, kind of work at in a more comfortable setting, I guess, because I'm in my office, my studio, working, and it's kind of nice. But
Yeah.
like even the weeks that I'm at the office, I just feel like next thing I know, I like look down to Monday, I look up, and it's like Friday, and I'm like, where's the middle of the week? Where did all that shit go? And I think a lot of that has to do with not even the work, but I think that I just kind of pack my evenings with the shit to do as well, and like streaming and stuff like that, and recording a podcast or whatever I might be doing. Like it's I
So the weeks go by faster for you when you're at work, so when you're going into work, and like slower when you're at home.
Well, probably the opposite. Probably a little faster when
Okay.
I'm at home. But I don't know if that just is a trick on my mind because I might be sitting in here all day working, and then like if it's a stream day, I move into my stream and I'm still sitting here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So maybe it just feels like, but it just feels like almost all the weeks are a little bit of a blur, and I don't know if that's because I'm older and way more cognizant of the time. Because I guess looking back, I've been doing a lot of looking back lately, being very nostalgic about my life, and like I've just been thinking about, wow, that feels like it was yesterday, but that was like 25 years ago. Some stuff I'm thinking about. Um, and I don't know. I don't know. It's just maybe it's that midlife crisis creeping. I don't know. It's weird.
Maybe, possibly. I had that feeling the other day when I was looking up when the PlayStation 4 actually released,
Mhm.
because PlayStation 5 is coming out, and it was 2013, and I was like, "What the fuck?" I still remember that day
Mhm.
as if it was last week. It's 7 years ago, and then
And
you
then,
start to think like, "Oh shit, 2013. That's quite a while. Where did the time go?"
well, my brain's just now getting adjusted to the fact that the 90s are like the bulk of the 90s we're moving into. That stuff was 30 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I'm still in that mindset of like, oh, that was just 20 years ago, and it's not. Like it's very much so 30 years ago now when you're talking about the 90s, and it's like it's weird. And I was discussing with the wife last night, because I'm always interested in like I'm always kind of interested in people's memories and what kind of sticks out in their head when they think of a certain point in their life, right? Like, so I was kind of like, so what? I was just kind of asking her, when you just think about childhood, what do you think about? And she was kind of struggling to. She's like, it was all kind of a blur, and I was like, I can think of like specific things, like very specific, like things that like toys I was playing with or things I was seeing on TV, which my parents were pretty young when they had me, early 20s. And so they were very much still figuring their lives out. I'm thinking about me
Mhm.
at 20 and I'm like, man, I'm glad I didn't have a kid at 20. Like I don't see, I mean, I guess it kind of forces you to grow up, but I do remember, a lot of MTV, a lot of movies that I probably shouldn't have been watching as a kid. Um, but it was just kind of like, that's, yeah. I mean, when I was 21, 22, like I was watching all these crazy movies and, into music and stuff like that. So
I remember MTV. I
yeah,
watched a lot of MTV, yeah.
really. So was it, um, was it just kind of a pipeline of what was playing in North America, or did you guys have like your own kind of set of what was playing in Europe?
Well, MTV had these shows, right? Like
Mhm.
MTV Cribs, for example,
Sure.
is a show that I can remember, and they basically dubbed it, I think.
Oh, okay.
So you had like it was the same shows, but it was dubbed in German.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just remember there was a long period of time where we had MTV always running in the background, and just watching music videos and stuff like that. And a specific memory that I have is I was very big into Korn. The band Korn was
Yeah.
like one of the first like new metal bands that I really got into.
Mhm.
And I remember there was an entire day back when VHS was still a thing, and we had like a VHS recorder. And there was an entire day I had my own VHS cassette, and I would have it in my VHS recorder watching MTV all day and just waiting for a Freak on a Leash, the music video from
Yeah.
Korn, just so I could record it on the tape. And I was sitting there for hours, but I did get it in the end.
Yeah,
And yeah.
it's wild because I would do that on the radio with new music that came out. Like I would sit there and I'd call in. I used to bug the shit out of our local DJs up for just random shit. The one that I asked for so much, and it's really embarrassing to think back on it. Not so much embarrassing, but more so my behavior was embarrassing. I would call the radio station every day, a couple of times a day, and request Green Jelly's Three Little Pigs. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember that song?
No, not at all.
So apparently Maynard from Tool was involved in this group for a little while. They were Green Jello at
Okay.
first, and then Jello sued them. And they had to change their name to Green Jelly, and it was like kind of like comedic heavy metal. The song, I think think their album, the big one, was called Serial Killer, and spelt cereal like the cereal you pour in a bowl and eat kind of thing.
Okay.
And so they had all these like weird songs. It was like one of the first CDs I ever bought, actually. And they had this one song that was kind of like their one semi hit. It was called, it was just the Three Little Pigs, and it was just literally a heavy metal version and telling of the story of the Three Little Pigs. And ultimately it kind of led up to this thing where the pigs ended up calling Rambo in, and Rambo just blew the wolf away, kind of shit. Like it was so stupid, but they would play it every now and then on the radio, and I would just call and ask for it all the time. I don't know why I was so obsessed with this shit, but it's really weird how like, and I'd sit there and I'd wait with my tape ready to go so I could record it.
Yeah.
But I remember being super young and watching MTV when it was just pretty much just exclusively music videos. I was really little. But then, yeah, when I got older, in the era of Korn, Marilyn Manson, like I was really obsessed with Korn too. I was really obsessed with Marilyn Manson for a while, pretty much through late middle school, almost through all of high school. I was kind of obsessed with Korn and Marilyn Manson and the bands that kind of were attached to those two, because with that comes, oh, now I know about Deftones. Now I know about Limp Bizkit or whatever.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I don't know. It's weird because I do remember that era in MTV as well, where you had to, if you wanted to watch music videos, you had to be like, oh, they only show music videos from this time to this time. So it was like an on purpose thing, whereas before you could just turn it on and they were just always on.
Yeah, and now you get YouTube and you can watch it whenever you want to.
Yeah, pretty much. Like YouTube is like your music videos now, your MTV now.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you kind of departed your, like, who influenced your listening, like as you were coming up, like when you hit that middle school to high school era, like when you started like finding new music? But do you remember who was like kind of the person or maybe the thing you saw that nudged you in that direction of like Korn or whatever?
Absolutely. It was my big brother, actually. My big brother is 5 years older than me.
Mm.
And he started one day listening to Limp Bizkit, actually.
Mm.
And he would have it pumped very loud in his room, and I would just listen to it outside of his room. And I would think to myself, oh man, this is cool. I've never like really heard anything like this before. So I wanted to know, what is this? And then I started to listen a little bit of Limp Bizkit. I think it was the Significant Other album.
Mm.
And then through Limp Bizkit, I actually got to Korn. And then I kind of like started to listen to a lot of Korn with Limp Bizkit in the background, and then with Limp Bizkit and Break Stuff, the song with Break Stuff, and the music video with Eminem in it.
Yeah.
Led me to Eminem, and then I went over to Eminem, and this is kind of like how this whole music thing got rolling for me, from like new metal over to hip hop, and from hip hop to like beats and all of that stuff.
It's interesting how people can like kind of drop that in, like drop something into your, just kind of into your universe. It seems like when you're younger, it's just kind of like all of a sudden this thing comes out of nowhere, and you're like, holy shit, like what is this? I'm used to my dad's classic rock, Leonard Skinner, Creedence, like all this stuff, and now it's all this new stuff that my dad would never touch, And I had two cousins that were probably about, I'm the oldest of my siblings, so I kind of spent I'm about 5 years older than my next youngest brother. So growing up early on, like the next closest semblance of a sibling were two cousins I had that were pretty close in age. They were roughly, I think they're probably like 10 years older than me, maybe. One was a drummer and really liked rock and heavy metal. Like he kind of got me into Kiss and like Iron Maiden and all these bands that, were just kind of for the time, for the late 80s, early 90s, they were kind of the bands that your parents didn't want you to listen to, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then his brother, my other cousin, he was a little bit younger, and he was all hip hop, Ice-T, all these like mid to late 80s hip hop groups. And so I kind of got the influence from that side as well. So when it came around that stuff like Korn and all this other stuff came out, I was like, this is like both of these people's influence and taste like colliding with each other. And so I really kind of grabbed onto that, and really just kind of dug into Corn and dug into all those bands that kind of came along
Yeah,
with them.
kind of like a musical evolution. Like you
Mm,
have, like you said, you have Kiss and you have Iron Maiden, and they are in one part of the spectrum, and then you have stuff people like Ice-T and Ice Cube, and you have those in the other part of the spectrum. And then, like you say, in the 90s, it kind of like started to merge a little bit, especially with like Limp Bizkit was, I think, the one band that I knew at least that really merged these two things. Like Fred Durst is almost a rapper instead of like a metal singer or frontman or whatever.
hmm Yeah.
So yeah, I totally understand what you mean.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and I think back to that time. I don't know how much you still listen to all that stuff. I mean, obviously our tastes change as you grow up and stuff like that. The only band that I really held on to and that I still listen to a lot are the Deftones. The Deftones are kind of like, but they kind of, while they kind of, I guess, exploded during that time with along with all those other bands, they never really kind of fit that mold. You know, they hung out with a lot of those guys and they toured with them a lot, and they had some similar sounds, but it didn't take but an album or two for them to really merge off from that genre.
Yeah.
Um, so I listened to them a lot, and then I know you're a big Tool fan, and a Maynard fan, and a friend got me into Tool sometime in high school, and I was just kind of like, these guys are blowing my fucking mind. So I still listen to them a lot too. And it's it's kind of amazing, like what you do hold on to and what you still actively listen to, compared to
Yeah,
what.
I have to say I don't listen to Corn anymore. That at least I don't remember when I listened to Corn the last time, to be honest. Uh, Also, not Limp Bizkit, although I'm still waiting on the new Limp Bizkit album, which should have come out like 5 years ago or so. I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on with that. But yeah, like I said, Tool is the one band that has been a part of my life since 2006. Actually, like the crazy story how I got to find these guys. Do you know something called Rock im Park or
N-
Rock am Ring?
no, not at all.
It's like Rock am Ring is like probably the biggest like not concert, what do you call festival, like the
Mm,
biggest festival goes 3 days in Germany, and you have like I don't know 50 bands or something over the course of 3 days, and they all line up and play live there. And I was in 2006. I was at Rock im Park at the time
mm,
for one day because I wanted to see Korn. Korn was playing at that day as like a headliner, and I got to watch Korn. And then after that, I didn't really know what to do, but I didn't like wanted to go home or something because I paid for the ticket, so might as well just watch another band or something. And then I found Tool, and Tool was actually playing the same day after Korn, and I just thought to myself, oh, why not? Let's just check him out. And I was standing there, like in the background too, because like I didn't know what that band was, so I don't really go forward and dance around and stuff. I just wanted to look at them and see what they do. And then they start playing Schism, like the classic Tool track that everyone knows.
mm.
And it blew me away so much. I needed to know everything about that band from that point forward. And yeah, since 2006,
Y-
always always
Yeah,
been a part.
those guys have always been. It's been it's been interesting following them because they've always been really mysterious in the way that they kind of conduct themselves. Like I've found out more obviously since the years have gone on. Maynard's been on Joe Rogan a couple times and talked about their process for creating, which sounds chaotic. Just like, oh,
Yeah.
we'll write something and they'll call me and I'll put some vocals to it. Like it just is the most spaced out creative process. Like there's never a moment where they even get together and they're like almost in the same space, kind of working
Yeah,
on
it
things.
almost feels like when you hear Maynard talking about it, it almost feels like he's so detached from that band. Like all three of those are like together, and they are in the band room, and they come up with stuff, and they play together. And then once they got something, they call him up, and then he goes in and just records his lines and fucks off again.
Yeah, it's almost like it's an afterthought. And I'm like, that's so weird. It's such a
Yeah.
gigantic band that sells out every time they go touring and like, worldwide adoration, and it's just kind of like for him it's just kind of like, oh, I guess I'll take a break from making wine and I'll go record some vocals,
Exactly. Yeah.
send it over, see what they think. And it's like this, it's kind of, I was reading a lot about the Deftones. They just had a album come out last month, and it's very similar. So this is the first time they've actually gotten back together to do like the full recording session. Like before, they were kind of doing a similar thing where, two of them would write like a riff and a beat, and they would kind of work on something, and then they'd send it to Chino, who's living somewhere else. They're all living in like three different parts of the country, and I'm just kind of like in your head, especially when you're younger, you're like, oh, these guys are always together. They're a band. Like they're gonna
Yeah.
go take a shit together. They're gonna go get food together. Like they're always together. So it was weird for me to read about um how the Deftones were doing that before this most recent album, and how Maynard's process for that whole thing, because like you said, it's just like an afterthought. You don't even. It's just so weird to me.
Yeah, especially when you like have your own band at some point. Like I had my own band when I was I don't know, I think I was 16 at the time when we
Mm,
started, and we did a lot of shit together, and we were best friends obviously, who just thought to themselves, well, let's make a band, because one guy was playing guitar, the other one was playing bass, I was playing drums, and it was just, let's just try what we can do.
yeah.
So yeah, you're together all the time, and you're not just making music. Like you sit around in the band room, and you smoke some weed together, you listen to some music, you talk shit, and all of that. So you kind of like project that onto your favorite bands as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think they hang out with each other and do everything together. And then I remember one day I watched the Metallica documentary, Some Kind of Monster.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I haven't. I want
Um,
to.
yeah, it's basically a documentary about their process of recording Saint Anger, I think was the
Mhm.
album.
Yeah.
And just just to see how broken that band was at some point kind of like opened my eyes a little bit to the fact that, oh yeah, I mean, obviously they're making music together for 10 years. They're not sitting around with each other all the time. Like, it's
Yeah.
just natural. It's human.
Yeah. It's hard to picture them as being like you kind of got it in your head that they're just a single individual, like a single unit of, like they're just one person made up of five people kind of thing, like a
Yeah.
Voltron, weird shit. They're
Like
always
a
together.
hive mind or something.
Yeah. Right. And then you kind of get older and you realize, oh no, they're just five dudes with their own lives, four dudes with their own lives. So, and it makes sense, but it's still weird to think about, because they do so everything about them is them together, so
Yeah.
it's odd. How did you get into drumming?
Uh, how did I get into drumming? Good question. I was 11 or 12 years old, and I wanted to play an instrument, and I was watching like a school play, or like a school performance of the school that I went to,
Mhm.
and I think it was just a bunch of different people playing, playing a song on their respective instruments. Like, one guy with a guitar playing something and just showing off, kind of. And there was one guy who played drums, and I was I was watching it, I was listening to it, and I thought to myself, yes, that's the instrument that I want to learn. And I was like, yeah, 12, I think 12 years old at the time. So, ran to my mom and said, yeah, I want to play drums. She's like, yeah, I mean, okay, let's send you to a drum school. And then I just started.
I want to play the loudest instrument I could possibly play, Mom. Let
Yeah.
me pick your brain for a second. That's funny, man. Yeah, it's interesting to me because, like I told you, my cousin is a drummer. Was in several bands. Because we have we had, I don't know how good it is now, but traditionally the town I grew up in, it's a college town, and it had a really good music scene. Like REM is from here, and the
Mm.
B-52s are from here. So a lot of there's a very heavy like indie alternative kind of a scene that was here for a long time. I don't know how prevalent it is now, but I mean that's they still have like festivals and stuff like that. But he played in a lot of bands through here, and it would always amaze me because I never, and it probably had more so to do with the fact that I just never practiced as a kid, but it just always amazed me like how coordinated a drummer has to be. Like I was always
Absolutely,
just
yeah.
I can't I can't focus on, I talk about focusing on just like getting through the day. Like so I can't imagine like I know it's practice, but like being able to focus on doing two or three things at once. And
It really is. It really is just practice. And I have to admit, I still am an extremely lazy person. So
mhm,
I never really practiced that much. So I never really got to be like exceptionally good or anything.
mhm,
Especially like the one thing that I noticed is in the years after like I started and then 12, 13, 14, 15, I would like practice, but I didn't really have like a practical thing I could incorporate what I learned. In other words, like, play with a band and do something like that. And I realized I didn't really progress until I met these other guys and we started to like, rent a band room and get together and just play a little bit.
mhm.
And I think I progressed in those few years that we played together so much faster and so much more just by fucking around with them and playing because that's I think that's how I learn better and faster when I can do it with with at least when it comes to drumming when I do it with others than just sitting like in the basement or something and just drumming for myself and learning some patterns or something like that.
Yeah, I mean it kind of it forces you to stretch a little bit, right? Because you have to apply it and make it make sense along with
Yeah.
other things. Whereas, and my cousins even told me this before because I would ask them all the time. I was like, man, what, just as even as a kid, it was just like, well, how do you? I don't understand. Like I was just kind of expressing my little kid, like not understanding how someone could get so good at something. And he even would say, like, you can only get so far by sitting, like you said, making your own patterns or even just, replicating what you've heard in your favorite songs and stuff like that. He's like, it's not until you're actually playing with other people that it starts to even change and become your own. Because when you're just sitting in the basement replicating things, you're just replicating something someone else has already done. So
Yeah, it adds a layer of creativity too, because someone whips out a riff on the guitar, and then you have to start thinking what kind of beat would fit to this. So you add this layer of creativity, and that um, motivates you to become better. So you can actually play a certain pattern that you have in your head or something like that. Whereas when you have like I don't know a sheet of paper with some notes on it, and
mm.
you're like, yeah, okay, let's do it, and
Yeah. What so obviously, like I said at the top of the show, you've put out some music under the name Spuntastic on Bandcamp, and
yeah.
one of which we use as kind of a intro outro for the show, and it's amazing. Thank you, by the way. Um, I so how like so progressing from doing things like drums. When did you kind of start messing with the kind of music you're doing now? Was that kind of a small progression, or did you just kind of jump into it one day, like, oh, you know what, I'm going to try to throw this together?
That thing happened. It's funny. My big brother again was a part of that because he started to fuck around with this production software that I'm using, which is called Reason,
Hmm.
and he showed it to me one day, and I think he actually like gifted me like a light version of it at my birthday, one of my birthdays. I don't really know when that was, and I started to do like electro,
Hmm.
like just classic house or something,
Sure.
just trying to fuck around with stuff like that. But yeah, the main thing was always like the drums. And then one day, as it goes, we all finish high school and we all disperse, uh, throughout the country. Like the one guy is studying there, the other guy is studying there, and you don't really have the chance to get together and still make music together. So I was thinking, what could I do to keep the creativity kind of like going, because music is a big part of my life, was a big part of my life back then already, and I still had the software lying around.
Hmm.
So I just thought to myself, oh, let's just, try to make something with that. And then fast forward into college, I met a guy in college who one day showed me instrumental hip hop. Like I didn't even know that existed. I knew hip hop and I knew rap and I knew both of those together, but I never knew there's an entire subgenre of just instrumental hip hop.
Hmm.
And he showed me one beat one day, and I still remember it was a sunny day, and I was listening to it, and I thought to myself, "Yes, this is what I want to do." And then I started to do, instrumental hip hop beats with that software, and that over the course of time developed into this synth wavy
Hmm.
kind of stuff that I'm doing right now because of like the instrumental hip hop. It's a lot of sampling. So
Hmm.
you basically you dig through old music and you try to find some melodies that you can sample and chop up and make new stuff like that. And at some point, I kind of had enough of that, and I wanted to develop or evolve musically a little bit
Hmm.
in terms of writing my own stuff and learning music theory, for example, and delving into this whole world. So I started to watch like YouTube videos about scales and chords and how do you do all of this stuff, and all these synthwave artists and how they do all of this stuff. And it's a completely different approach in the software itself as well, because all of a sudden you have to work with synthesizers, which is I something I have never done before, and that's the whole thing. And
Mm.
yeah, it's just this need to evolve into something more that kind of like brought me into this.
Yeah, yeah, and it's kind of I don't know. It's kind of like it's interesting because it's still filling that void of of creativity that you always had with music, right?
Yeah,
And it's still, but it's also changed. Like so, to look back, to even look back on stuff that I was doing 3 or 4 years ago, I'm just kind of like, oof, it's kind of like, wow, I've really changed into something. And I don't know if that's kind of like looking back on a band you used to listen to and being like, ugh, I really listened to the Insane Clown Posse at one point, like I really did, and or something like that. It's not that I'm ashamed of it. It's just kind of like it's weird that I was so into something like that at some point. And then I kind of look at it creatively the same way, where I might listen to a really old podcast I did, or go back and listen to a radio show that I did with my friend, or something like that. And it's weird how you slowly get there. It's never like an overnight thing, It's never one big bite, but just how it just kind of chisels away and
yeah.
turns into something different.
It also makes you reflect a little bit on your own personality and how that changed over the years.
Hmm.
Like, you listen to that kind of band 10 years ago, and you listen to that band because you were different than you are today. And then you kind of reflect on how did you get to where you are today. And it's interesting.
It is, and it's not that I know I threw Insane Clown Posse out as an example, but I can still go back and listen to it. But what I think about is like me now, I would never even give this a chance. I would never even give this
Yeah.
a chance to enter my universe, because I'm in a different place in life where I was very at the time, and this is a similar time as, Corn and Limp Bizkit and, all these other bands that, aren't really around, there's a band called Systematic, Spine Shank. Like there's all these bands that I listened to that were very much big in their own little bitty tight genre within the main genre, you go back and listen to it, you're like, man, I wouldn't even. It's not that I wouldn't allow it in. It's just not something that I even relate to. But at that time, in that age, you're just so open to something new. You're so open to something new because you haven't quite filled up the hard drive with a bunch of shit you like already.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting. Did you ever listen to Spine Shank? Did you ever know Spine Shank?
No,
I might
it
have to.
doesn't
I might have to send
ring
you
a
some of
bell.
their stuff. They're they're very much into that, like the more screamy side of new metal, but they also kind of have this industrial thing to them. So there was like this different sound. So they kind of it's almost like if you were to take like a heavier Fear Factory kind of thing. You know, it's a little more industrial, like not quite Nine Inch Nails, but maybe more Skinny Puppy, but heavy. Um,
Okay.
it's
I think
interesting.
I owned an album of Fear Factory, but that was a long time ago.
I think I owned one. I owned Obsolete, and then one of my other friends was like a huge Fear Factory fan, but very, very, very drum machine sounding type bands.
Hmm,
You know,
yeah.
um, but
Trivium is a band that pops into my mind.
Trivium, yeah, yeah, Trivium is that's one of those bands where like you look at their discography and you're like, holy shit, how many albums did they put out? There's like so many, and they can all sound so different too. Um, but yeah, like there's a certain point in life where you're just open to just about anything. And you know, I'm trying to think of all these like weird bands that opened for. Because I probably, how many times did you see Corn? Did you only see Corn live that one time?
I saw Korn 2 times
Two
in
times?
2006 and 2008.
Okay, I think I saw them four or five, something like that. But like I always knew that I was going to go to the show and see a good show with Corn. Like the last time I saw them, I actually went with the wife, and it was at the 20 or maybe it was the 20-year anniversary. I think it was 2016. So it was like the 20-year anniversary of their first album, like the self-titled album.
Yep.
And they played it front to back, which was cool as shit. And then they went through and they played a bunch of other, you know, all their other singles like that after that.
Bet
So it
that
was
was a good time.
oh man, and it's one of those things where it's like it's amazing to see a band like that that's been doing it for that long, and just to see how tight they are live. You know, they've been doing it so long that they just have perfected, you know, they have perfected their craft, and doing it live just looks so effortless, you know?
Yeah.
And it just sounds like holy shit, like you don't ever I mean, I'm
Also,
sure you go ahead.
especially, I was just gonna say, especially the all the changes that they went through, like with their drummer David Silveria who
Mhm.
left, and then Head, one of the guitarists, left for a while because he found God or something like that,
Mhm.
and couldn't bear it anymore for a while, and then they had to find a new like a lot of changes this band went through, and then that they can still put out a show like they put out 10, 20 years ago
Mhm.
is that's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and like you're just kind of like, wow, these guys. It was kind of blowing my mind. I was like, that album's 20 years ago, and that's fucking with me right now. But it's really weird. You know, I was looking the other day. I was talking to my buddy, and we were really into Nine Inch Nails together through high school, and I was listening to something off Pretty Hate Machine, and I was just kind of like, let me look up, you know, Pretty Hate Machine. Just every now and then, I'll just pull up, you know, now that liner notes don't really exist anymore, you go to Wikipedia or whatever. And I was looking, I was like, holy shit, this album is 31 years old. Pretty Hate Machine. I was like, wow, it came out in '89, and I was like, that is just weird to
It's like
me.
it's actually crazy. I never really got into 9 Inch Nails
Y-
back in the day, which is kind of weird to me because I'm a huge fan of Trent Reznor for a couple years now.
mhm,
But back then, I don't know. I probably never gave him a real chance, I guess.
mhm.
And no one in my close group of friends was like really into 9 Inch Nails who would just bug me all the time to listen to them or something. But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, you're you know just from watching your stream and from just being around being around your discussions about cinema, like Trent
Yeah,
Reznor is obviously doing a lot more scoring and cinematic type music than he was when the band was together and actively touring and stuff like that. So
absolutely. Yeah.
it really appeals obviously to your because you really like music scores too. Um,
Oh yeah.
it's it's interesting like just to see how someone did you see that they put the Quake soundtrack, the Nine Inch Nails Quake soundtrack on vinyl like last
I
month or something
saw
like that.
that. Yeah, I saw that. I saw the couple months ago. I was looking at the 9 Inch Nails store page because I was thinking about getting the Bird Box vinyl collection, which
Mm.
is like 4 vinyls, and it looks fantastic. And I saw that the Quake soundtrack was on pre-order. for vinyl, and I was like, holy fuck, I want that.
Which that's another thing where it's like that's a nostalgia bomb in itself where it's like, oh man, I really like Nine Inch Nails, but I also played a shit ton of Quake, and that was kind of my introduction to Quake. Was like my introduction to multiplayer gaming, um, for the most part. Like I had a friend that actually went on to do some work with some really big game developers, but more so in like a tournament fashion. Like he kind of did these underground Street Fighter tournaments, um, where basically he would just organize the whole thing, and he'd get people that he knew were good at the game together in Atlanta, and they would just have these tournaments. And then he moved out to California and kept doing it, and was just almost like working. It was almost like he was a concert promoter, but it was just for like
Mm.
straight up like fighting tournaments.
They
For
have
Street
like the
Fighter.
arcade machines too.
Well,
They played on arcade machines.
I think that he was doing the thing where they set up the huge screen, and then you sat down with your own, whether you wanted to use a controller or if you wanted to use like an arcade stick or whatever, and you kind of
Okay.
brought your own instrument to the battle kind of thing. um so he was kind of doing that thing, kind of as a underground professional esport type thing, and he ended up getting snatched up by Capcom for I don't know if he's still working for them or not. But he was like running some of their social media stuff. And then he kind of like I would talk to him every once in a while. We were like really good friends in middle school. We hung out a lot. We shared a love of professional wrestling, together in middle school and into high school. And I haven't heard from him in a while. He kind of ghosted everything. I know he's still working and he got married and all this stuff, but I don't know. Some people just disappear. But yeah, he was kind of the guy that introduced me to Quake CTF, back when you had to
Mhm.
use, I think it was called GameSpy or Quake Spy, something like that, where you had to use that to connect to network games. And it was my first introduction to holy shit, you can play like Capture the Flag, which I was obsessed with, or Team Deathmatch, and then that kind of led me into getting with a group of people at school and setting up. We figured out we could install Quake on the computer lab, and we would basically just go in there after school and 3 hours of LAN party basically every day.
Yeah, we
Um,
used to do that with Quake 3 Arena.
mm,
We would like hang out at a friend's house, everyone with their PCs, with their old ass PCs, and just try to get a LAN going.
yeah, it's interesting because we did the Quake thing, and then it kind of evolved into Unreal Tournament. It became like really big at our school.
Yeah.
Um, and because I was watching you play Diabolical the other day, and I was like, man, that really just, even though it's not the same game, clearly, just the movement and all the, I don't know, all just all the functionality of everything. I was just kind of like, that really kind of just takes me way back
Yeah, puts you back.
to those games. What kind of pushed you in the direction, obviously super into music and stuff like that. Like what kind of pushed you in the direction of broadcasting and kind of doing what you're doing now with streaming?
Phew, that all started when I was in 2016.
Mhm.
I was like, working just jobs, like nothing specific, just jumped from job to job, kind of like lost in life a little bit. And I one day discovered, I think it was Dead by Daylight. Like I was playing a lot of Quake Live back then, and a good friend of mine in Quake Live, someone who I knew through Quake Live, started playing Dead by Daylight when it came out, and he introduced me to that game. And after he introduced me to the game, I started watching like on YouTube a few guys. There was a guy named Quizzle who was streaming on YouTube
Mhm.
Dead by Daylight, who was considered to be like an insane killer at the time, and I got interested through that in broadcasting and switched, flipped over to Twitch. And then I found like all the usual suspects. Like Jen Denise was one of the first people that I watched, Diatech, Amora, and one day I found Morph
Mhm.
and started to not only watch but also like made an account on Twitch and started like to talk and become a part of the community and stuff like that. And I was happy in that with that place for a long time. Like I was playing Dead by Daylight, I was watching the Dead by Daylight streamers, I was part of the community, and you know how that like evolves over
Mm.
time. You know, find new friends and stuff like that. And yeah, one day people just kept requesting that I would start streaming because they wanted to see how my point of view when I played Killer, because I made myself somewhat of a name, I guess you could say, as as a nurse back then, still in early 2017, and they just wanted to see what that looks like from my point of view because they always saw it, you know, through the eyes of the streamer when I was versing someone like Moore, for example.
Mhm.
And yeah,
That's interesting, man.
decided to, you know, just put something up and, you know, get a stream going, and got addicted, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it is a weird addiction, right? Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like you get you jump in and you like you said it's very similar for me. I actually had a friend when DBD first came out, and I had a friend that was really into it. He was like, "You got to play this game, man. You got to check this thing out." And it was like a free weekend. I jumped in and I didn't really get it. I was just kind of like, I don't know. It didn't grab me the first time I played it. I was like, this is fucking dumb. I don't know what's happening. I
Okay.
don't know what to do. All right, I'm just gonna go off and forget this ever happened, kind of thing. Um, and then I'm trying to remember. I think it was we were trying to find I have a group of friends that we still get together every now and then and play some games and stuff like that. And we were trying to find something we could play, and I guess Friday the 13th was kind of big at the moment. Like it had just come out, and people seemed to be enjoying it. And my friend was like, "Hey, what do you think about maybe us getting Friday the 13th and all playing it together?" I was like, I mean, maybe. I don't know how it's gonna play. Like I would watch a couple things on YouTube. He's like, "Hey, this guy's playing it right now, so go check it out and just see what you think, and maybe we can all just get it and play." And he sent me to Angry Pug, and
Okay.
so I started watching that, and immediately what grabbed me, just because of a radio background, was the fact that, okay, this guy's broadcasting to, you know, however many people at the time. It was pretty early on, so it probably wasn't obviously the kind of numbers he pulls now, but it was quite a few hundred people. Um, and I was like, this is pretty amazing. Like it was interesting. I was mostly checking out the game content, and then I just kind of got sucked in by the Pug being the host and being the person he is when he plays games and stuff like that. And I was like, this is really interesting. So a lot of people had already known him as a DVD person at the time, and I had no clue. And I was just kind of like, all right, well, I'm just going to watch this guy. And he was the first person I subscribed to. And I was like, all right, well, this is cool. And then he kind of got tired of it Friday the 13th, and then he went back to Dead by Daylight. And I was kind of like, oh shit, man, I did not have a good time with this game. But then I actually watched someone play the game rather than you ever get into a new game or into something new and someone's trying to explain it to you while you're trying to learn it, and it's
Yeah.
just kind of like, dude, I don't get what you're telling me over this voice communication when
Yeah.
I'm doing my own thing and you're doing yours. Like, no, you can jump through this window or you can drop this thing, and I'm just kind of like, I can't hold all this in my head. But taking the time to sit back and actually watch someone actively do it, I was kind of like, oh, I get how this is played now. Like I got this weird understanding of how it was played, which I probably could have gotten there eventually had I stuck with it without watching a stream, but that's kind of what got me kind of up and going with that.
Yeah, it's that visual aspect that you have with streaming too.
Yeah.
And like he's not necessarily sitting there and explaining it to his community. Like he's trying to be an entertainer, obviously, but
Mhm.
you kind of you pick up on it
Yeah.
slowly. It's kind of like when I watch you play Hunt Showdown, for example. When I first watched it, I had zero clue what's going on, but you know, you just keep watching, and I never really asked you, could you explain the game to me, or something like that, or you never tried, and I would just watch, and after a couple of hours, you start to like grasp it because you have the visual and you see like patterns of things that the streamer does and stuff, and you know, you pick up on it quite quickly.
Yeah. And something about that was just super appealing to me. Just the broadcast aspect of it, and I started kind of messing with it. Um I had um I had streamed though before that, but it wasn't with the same intention, if that makes any sense. Like I had basically on my Facebook account, I had streamed myself playing Doom 2016, and
Okay.
but it was just kind of there was no camera. It was just me playing the game, and I had a microphone, and I was just kind of like, because I was already recording my podcast, so I kind of had the equipment to do the audio side of things easily, um, and I just kind of did that, but that didn't grab me in the same way. I was just kind of like, I'm just bored, and I want something to do, and I want to talk into a microphone. Um, and then I actually I think the first thing I was actually streaming for a little while on Twitch was PUBG, which I sucked at. It was horrible, terrible. And then I got into Dead by Daylight, and that kind of got me, like you said before. Once you kind of get into that community, it's such a shared passion for the same, for the same game. It's just such a weird collection of people, like all from different backgrounds, but they all have this one thing they love doing.
Yeah, it's funny because you say um you had streamed before, but like with a different intention. I think it really is. If I wouldn't have been part of a community before I started, I don't think I would have stuck with it,
Yeah.
because you don't really stream because you desperately just want to play the game,
Mhm.
like solely out of that reason, or and you kind of stream because of I don't know, it's like somewhat of a community feeling, I guess.
The
It's
interaction.
almost like, yeah, almost like opening up your house to for a few friends to come over and just watch you play a game, and just talk shit with them and have some fun.
Yeah, I think that's the more addictive side of it, right? Where it's just kind of
Yeah,
like, there's these people now that I look forward to seeing when I turn on the stream, where I'm like, oh, well, I know I'm going to see, at least this handful of people, whether a lot of people show up or not, I know I'm going to at least see so and so, or at least going to, someone's going to pop in and say hi. It's kind of like just going to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an equivalent where it's like, I don't know, maybe when you're in college and there's just like a communal area where everybody kind of goes and hangs out, like a quad of some sort, where you're like, oh, old
like a
fucking Larry's gonna be
recreational
on there.
room or something.
Right, right. Just somewhere you've gotten used to going, and you're like, okay, the usual suspect. You're kind of almost like I've been like kind of telling people who don't understand what Twitch is. I'm like, it's kind of like going to a bar, kind of
Yeah,
going to a bar, and like you've got your usuals that are there, and sometimes they are there, and sometimes they're not, and and then you kind of start to get to know, like I've gotten to know you and the people that hang out in your place, and I've gotten to know like Curdy and the people that hang out at her place. So it's just kind of like you've got these little bars set up in this virtual town where you can pop in because you're gonna know somebody there. Um, it's such a weird thing, but I think that's more the draw, um, obviously than the game, because you can fire up a video game at any time, and just kind of dick around, but you're not exactly going to be talking to yourself, and
yeah.
talking about life and stuff like that. And I know with you, it's kind of, especially over the past year, like I think it has for a lot of people we know, because Dead by Daylight's kind of longer in the tooth for a game. It's like what, 4 years old now, a little over 4 years old.
A little over 4 years, I think. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are just, regardless of how you feel about the game, I think it just, at some point things run their natural course and you just want to do something different. You want to check something else out. I know you've been doing a lot more just chatting and, kind of hanging out and just literally enjoying, it seems like at least enjoying the community, because at some point you show up, like obviously I was first brought over to you, I think from a Morph raid. Um, and, I stuck around because I was like, I want to see this guy play killer, because I wasn't playing much killer either. And then at some point you start sticking for the broadcaster more so than you do for the game anymore. Like there's some switch where
Yeah,
you're kind of
absolutely.
like, I'm watching this guy for this game. All right, because that's what he plays. He mains it. I don't know anything about him, but he's playing a game I know and like. And then at some point it becomes, all right, well, I don't really care what he's playing. I'm going to show up because I know it's a fun hang kind of thing. Um, and how has like, you seem like you've been enjoying the just chatting stuff. I've been doing more of that as well, just because that kind of leans more into my background of what I've enjoyed before streaming. Um, has that been kind of a cool transition, or is it just kind of like you're just kind of flowing with it?
it wasn't really a conscious decision
Hmm.
I made, to be fair. I don't really know. I don't really have like a perfect answer for that. It's just I'm like flowing with it. You know, I'm kind of like started doing whatever I want to do. And I tried the whole chatting thing for the first time because um I had like this new scene set up with and this new camera. Like this whole camera thing is completely new, and I just wanted to dig around with it, try it out. And I took a break for like 3 months off of Twitch, and when I came back, I didn't want to like fire up DBD or a game or something and
Hmm.
play for like quote unquote coming back to Twitch or something. I wanted to start streaming and hang out and talk to the people
Hmm.
that would come by, and that's when I like started to realize, holy fuck, this is really fun. Like just sitting here and talking, doing nothing else. I mean, maybe watch a trailer on YouTube and talk about film or whatever. And that's kind of like how that came, I
Hmm.
guess. But you could say um, that I started to experiment more
Hmm.
because there was a time, especially like in 2017, 2018, around that period, where like when you start out, you almost feel like pressured into playing the game that people know you for,
Yeah.
because like you said, like people start watching you for the game, but
Hmm.
it takes a while for you to start watching someone because of the personality. And yeah, there was a lot a big period where a long period where I would just think, no, I have to play Dead by Daylight. I can't really like do anything else. So, and I kind of like overcame this right now, I'd say.
It's a pretty good feeling because I mean I think that anybody who plays a one game as their quote unquote main kind of goes through this where it's like I have to play this. That's why people show like you kind of get in your head about it. Um, because when when I started breaking away from DBD, it was kind of like a small here and there. I would play something different, or I just set. I started with just setting up one night. I was like, all right, this night's going to be variety, so don't come expecting DBD. Kind of set up the
Yep.
precedent. Um, but I think a lot of people do feel trapped by their game. I think, and a lot of people don't know how to deal with it because they do want that interaction, and some people don't like that feeling when they look over. If you're a number watcher, I'm not a number watcher, thankfully. I used to be.
No,
Um,
me neither.
if you do look over, there's a lot of people who you can tell they're not having a good time because they're too concerned about their number, and that I've talked to like Ape Fist about this before, and uh, it's being trapped feels very real. Um,
Absolutely. It also depends on, I guess, the size of your channel. Like I keep thinking to myself, I'm almost kind of lucky to not be a guy who has like, I don't know, 500 people sitting in his Dead by Daylight streams or something,
mm,
because it gives me a certain freedom to say, fuck it, I don't want to play Dead by Daylight right now. I'm not in the mood. I'm just gonna fire up something else. And even if I tank in numbers, it's not gonna break my neck, so to speak.
right, right, yeah. It is it feels nice to break out of that. Obviously, this month I've been doing pretty much all horror games. I've pretty much stepped away from Hunt for the month and just kind of bringing up these games that I've been meaning to play. Because I mean, if you're a PC gamer and you play your games off of Steam, you've probably got more games than you'll ever play, like most people, and it's it's nice to kind of move through the catalog and just play some different stuff. And it's also nice to when you find something that's just like a bit like I played something the other night and I was kind of like, I cannot do this. This is fucking horrible. And so we just changed games. Um, when there's not an expectation or a perceived expectation, it feels a lot better. I did someone leading up to this because I was pretty excited about it. I did ask some people to because this question relates to what we're talking about. I did ask some people like, oh, you got any questions you want me to kind of run by or whatever. um so someone we know goes by the name Simply So. Um, he
Mhm.
he he had a question, and it's a pretty interesting one. It's a little more thought out than a lot of people were just asking just random weird questions, but we'll get to those in a bit. He says, live streaming still being a relatively new form of entertainment, many people, both inside and outside the platform, may not understand the struggles and obstacles streamers may experience. I constantly see streamers who seem, quote, trapped playing the same game for months and years on end to appease their audience or to make ends meet. I'm no psychologist, but I think this potentially could lead to a serious burnout and possibly mental health issues in some cases. With this in mind, and this is his question, did you at any point feel forced to play a certain game like DBD? If so, what was your mentality towards it? Did it feel more like a job, or did you still feel like I'm only playing video games, it doesn't matter, etc.?
No, absolutely. Yes. So first of all, yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said before, like 2017, 2018 was like the time period where I felt I have to, because like you said, a lot of people knew me from and also came over from Morph's channel
Mm-hmm.
back then. Like, used to host me for like these big numbers, and you would think, fuck yeah, I have to play it Dead by Daylight because that's why people are here. That's what people want to see. That's why people know me, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it did feel more like a job at that point. Still a good job, I guess you
Mm-hmm.
could say. Like I keep remembering that quote from Be Real from Cypress Hill. He once said in an interview, being a rapper or what they do is great, but it's still a job.
Yeah.
So like he fucking loves what he does, but at the end of the day, it is still a job, and that's kind of like how would I would describe that as well.
Okay.
So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think, and you can see it happen to people too. There will be these waves. I mean, I know you don't do a whole lot of social media, but there will be these waves on Twitter. Obviously from a lot will have to do with Dead by Daylight, or just Twitch in general, where people will be like, "Hey guys, I'm gonna take off for a little while. I just haven't been feeling myself," and I think there's just this underlying pressure,
it's
because you,
it's tough
yeah.
mentally. It's like a lot of people say this, and I never understood it before I was in it myself. But streaming might be physically not very taxing,
Mhm.
but it's mentally probably like the hardest thing that I've ever done, because it does bug you
Mhm.
on some level, that because it you keep thinking to yourself, fuck man, I when I play, like, let's just make an example. When I play Dead by Daylight, I'm on 100 people, and when I play literally anything else, I'm like on 50 people. So that's a 50% drop. Am I just shit at what I do? Like, am I just a shitty broadcaster, and people just come to watch a game, and they just come here because they got recommended by someone else and not because they actually enjoy me playing the game and my commentary? So you kind of like, it's very easy to fall into this self-deprecation, if you will,
Yeah.
and go down a spiral almost.
And it's tough too when I mean, obviously you're clearly a creative, you like to create things, and be it music, be it streaming, whatever it might be. And I've always kind of felt like this too, because I've got, knowing a lot of people who podcast and knowing a lot of people who stream, there is, and I've told plenty of people, like, you're always going to be your own worst critic anyway, and no matter what you're
Yeah.
doing. So it kind of like amplifies it, because you're just kind of like, now you're just, do I suck? Like, I already feel like I suck because, just because I've always felt I'm always way more critical of my work than I am about other people's, creation and stuff. And I think
Yeah,
that's a
absolutely.
natural thing to feel, is like, you spend all this time on something, and you know this, especially with like anything you're working on audio wise. You're like, I've listened to this like 25 times, and it just sounds like blur now. Like, it just sounds like nothing to me, because I've said, it's just like saying the same word over and over again. It loses its meaning. Um, I think that it's that combined with the fact that you're seeing like, okay, now I have 50% less people in here, and I feel it gets to you, and that's what made me honestly turn off the numbers, because I was just kind of like, there's why am I looking at this? I don't need to see it. I don't even look at my performance anymore. I'm just kind of like, if people show up, they show up. And if they don't, then fine. And I think there's an added pressure, especially for people who do this as a living. Like I've talked to, I brought up Ape Fist, but we've talked about it before. Me and him, we love doing it, but at the same time, it's not what pays our bills. So I got to imagine the pressure is tenfold on someone who uses it to pay their bills.
Yeah, sure. Also, if you keep thinking, most broadcasters are what, like, maybe in their mid to late 20s, maybe early to mid 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they're not stupid. They know this has an expiration date for them as well. Like, you don't want to sit here and stream when you're 60 or something, and, for a living still, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, at least I think, there is also this added time pressure. Like, you have to, if you don't want to do anything else after this gig, then you have to make a certain amount in these couple years or a decade or however long you set yourself, um so you can, so you're like financially safe at the end of it,
Yeah.
when it, like, inevitably it just drifts away.
Yeah. And
So I think that adds to it. Yeah.
and there's a misconception for a lot of people that, and I'm sure that you've heard from people where they're kind of like, well, you're a partner, so you're doing great, right? And it's just kind of like, no,
Yeah.
that's not how it
Not at all.
works. No, I'm doing horrible. um, but like there are those folks who do what I like to call undeniable numbers. Like it's like this person's undeniably going to be fine for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
The people like a Co Carnage or a Tim the Tap Man, where there's like, oh, 30,000 people on a Thursday just chilling in his chat. Like it's okay, all right, then you're probably going to be fine. But it's like any other form of entertainment. There's going to be the ones that make it and make it big, and then there's everyone else. There's everyone else at all different levels. And there, for a lot of people, yeah, there is a time limit. At some point, you're just not gonna. You have to really be able to adapt to keep relating to people and changing it up and stuff like that. And there are people out there that are really good at doing that, but at some point, the candle burns out. It just does. So it's always interesting to see, people kind of. I don't want to say it's interesting to see people struggle, but it's always interesting for me to see how people deal with that as they hit those different layers of their streaming career.
Yeah.
He also said, lastly, with life struggles outside of streaming, when life struggles outside of streaming intertwine with struggles of streaming, what have you done to cope with this? And if you go back in time, would there be anything you would do differently with streaming?
Phew. That's a tough question.
It's deep. He got deep on us.
Yeah, that's very deep. Struggles outside. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about streaming, right? There is a certain, like, people realize when you're having a tough time, even like just mentally a tough time, when you're having a bad day, even though you're trying to like fake it a little bit, like it always breaks through a little bit. Um, I don't really know. I don't really. I mean, I never really, I never really I never really did the whole. I tried to fake everything route. Like let's just say something happened in my real life, and I'm a very private person, so like
Sure.
that I don't like to speak too much about my personal life and my privacy and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I try to keep it to myself, but I never really tried to fake happiness, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and just be like, no, everything is fine. Like, I try to stay real. So when it comes to the question how to deal with real life struggles and then streaming, you kind of intertwine it in a way. Like, you let people know it is kind of a rough day, but you're trying to make the best out of it
Yeah.
with them, or in a way. Or when it comes to the chatting thing, like, just talking about real life struggles, for example. Like you're not just chatting and talk about happy things, but what are the problems of what kind of problems do you have right now? What kind of problems does this person have? And you're just trying to talk it out, basically.
Yeah, and that kind of well, and when people share, like it's amazing. And I know that you've definitely dealt with this. It's amazing how much you learn about the people who come to hang out. Like
Yeah.
just slowly over time. Like I used to watch this weird documentary show called Locked Up, and they would just go in and interview people that work in prisons and people who were incarcerated and stuff like that. And it's amazing how much a prisoner can learn about someone who works at the prison just by a little information here, a little information there. I like going to your channel for a while. Like I figured out, oh, we've got similar taste in movies. Based off of the bands you bring up and the music you talk about, like we've got some similar taste in bands and music. Like you just learn these things, but it also works the other way around. Like someone comes in, they're having a bad day, or I've got this test coming up, or I've applied for a job and I've got an interview tomorrow, and you just start like piecing together like all these people you've never met in real life. You just start piecing together these little lives that you're seeing. Um,
Yeah,
it,
and you start to sympathize with them as well.
yeah,
Like I know people who like, for example, they hate their current job, right? And you just feel for them because you've been in that situation before, or I have been in that situation before, and you just know how it feels, and then you start sympathizing and have empathy with people you've never met, but you just hear these stories from them through the internet.
right. And then like that could jumpstart something that you could, if it's something that you're willing to share, like, like that could jumpstart a story that you're like, oh, well, I was in this situation one time where, I was kind
Exactly.
of
Yeah.
doing this and, this is how I got through it, or this is kind of how I approached it at least. It's interesting. I know you mentioned like you're a very private person, and that's kind of like it's kind of like part of your Twitch personality to me. It's kind of like this.
Yeah.
It's this partial mystery. Like we're getting to know this guy, kind of, but not really. And is there anything that's been surprisingly hard or easy about that? With since you've been streaming, where it's like this is like I'm able to manage this pretty easily, or have you had like any challenges where you're like, shit, I don't want to give too much away, you know?
There certainly have been situations where I had to stop myself from saying too much. Like I was in the flow. You know how I sometimes like get just into the flow. Like I kind of like look off screen onto my wall and just talk and talk because I just have like a train of thought going on a certain subject or something.
Mhm.
And then, as you say, sometimes you relate it to personal stories. And yeah, there certainly have been situations where I wanted to say something, but in my brain I stopped myself and I was, no, hold on, you're like revealing a little bit too much. But it doesn't happen that often, so it's relatively easy actually
Mm,
to keep things to myself. And I think the challenge is rather the realization that it's counter it works against me on a let's say on a professional level, because
mhm,
I think people want to relate, especially on a platform like Twitch. People want to relate to someone. People want to see someone, and it's easier to relate to a person when they can see the person
mhm,
and know what they look like, and age, gender, whatever else there is. So I'd say that would be the biggest challenge, that I am just not relatable as an individual. But then again, I have to say I don't want to be relatable as an individual. I want to be this abstract figure that you don't know anything about other than my voice and the little bits and pieces that I give you.
yeah.
So, balancing that, I guess, would be the biggest challenge, I'd say.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see the approach that people take, that do a no cam stream, because,
Yeah.
um it's much different. Like there's a like even just so I obviously I use a camera, but there's some nights where I'm just kind of like, you know what, I'm not doing a camera tonight. I just feel like shit. I want the room to be dark. I don't want lights in my face, and I just want to just chill out and play some games and talk shit. And it's just there's such a different level of on being on your game kind of thing.
Yeah.
You can be so much more relaxed, not having to worry about, okay, am I making a stupid face? Does it matter, does it matter what, t-shirt I'm wearing? Like any of that stuff. Like there's a whole list of considerations that are just out of the mix now that you're not turning the camera on tonight. Um, so it's always interesting to me to see streamers that are just kind of like, no, it kind of like, honestly, I kind of like it a little more when people can pull it off, because it really reminds me of growing up. And we grew up in the middle of nowhere, so we didn't have like, I don't think we had like cable TV. So we had cable TV growing up, and then like when I reached about 10 years old, we moved out into the middle of nowhere where we didn't have cable TV. And so all I had was the radio. So all I heard was people's voices, and
Mm.
there was no visual to it. And it kind of reminds me of that, where it's just kind of like, this is kind of cool. This person's able to hold a crowd, or hold a group of people to hang out and with conversation alone. And to me, it's more impressive because you don't have the cheesing at the camera to rely on, where like something happens and you're like, what the fuck was that? Kind of that look
Yeah.
on your face. So you have to kind of be able to theater of the mind things a little more.
Absolutely. That's how I looked at it always. So it is absolutely easier on your mind when you don't have a cam on, because you can basically do whatever you want. Like you could sit there naked if you want to
Sure.
and don't have to worry about anything. But it is absolutely more difficult to be funny. Like comedy
Mm.
is so much more difficult if you don't have that visual aspect, because
Yeah.
you have to convey everything through your voice. And especially if you're like a cynical bastard like I am, then it's even more difficult to let people know, hey, what I just said is that was a joke. I didn't mean this. Yeah, I'm not a sexist or whatever.
That's why you might throw in a "am I right" at the end of it, just
Yeah,
because.
exactly. You have to come up with a few things so people, especially someone who just comes into the stream, let's say a new person, and they don't know anything about you, and then you just make like a sexist remark as a joke or something,
Hmm.
they would immediately go like, what the fuck is this person?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. It's there's another layer to it on the other side, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, not only do you not have the ability to do that look, you have to add things to what you're saying. What a lot of this probably has to do more so with the community you kind of got involved with DVD and with streaming and stuff like that. Was that the main driving force for being like, I'm gonna do my stream in English and not German or something like that?
Yeah, there's two main things. The first one was obviously a bigger crowd. I can reach more people, and the friends that I made by being involved in these communities before streaming, they were all across the world, so we always talked English with each other. So I didn't want to alienate anyone by starting to stream and just doing it in German, because obviously most of the people that I got to know, they can't speak or understand German.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing. And the second thing is that I like the language much more than I like my native language,
Mm.
to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's do you feel like, so you've been, at this for, 4 plus years. Um do you feel like, have you noticed your improvement in English?
I'd say yeah.
Yeah,
I would say so.
that's interesting.
Um Maybe not like vocabulary or anything,
Mhm.
but pronunciation, structure, building of sentences, the structures and stuff like that. And like I'm still struggling with it. Like I'm not as eloquent as I would like to be in this language, but it became easier over the years to have a thought on something, like, or an opinion, if you will, on a subject, and have that in my mind and then translate it into words,
Mm.
and speak about it, basically. Like that was, I think, the biggest struggle. I could speak English, I could understand English, but I think the biggest thing in the beginning was having a certain thought and wanting to convey that with language, and then trying to translate it, because you would always think in the beginning, I would always think like in German, and then I would translate it in my mind before I would speak. But now I start to think in English from the get-go.
Yeah, that's we've always asked my dad about that because my dad, his side of the family's from Peru, and so they
Mhm.
came over here when he was, somewhere between 10 and 13, and I've always, I was always wondering, and I've asked him before, and he said it's a little bit of both. I was like, when you think about things, are you thinking in Spanish or are you thinking in English? And he said it's more so English now because he was a kid when he came here, so he's been speaking English for a while. Um, but we had an interesting discussion in your channel just the other day. You were playing Amnesia, and you read something that was in German in a note in the game, and it it sounded awesome. But like again, we got into this discussion where you were like you feel the same way about some people the way they speak English. It's listening to someone who has a grasp of a language that they've been speaking their entire life. It sounds like they've got so much. They've got everything is like perfected. Everything's
Yeah.
kind of got its sound of like, oh, this motherfucker's been speaking German forever. So it's kind of like it sounded really cool. And my dad is an interesting case where he speaks he speaks Spanish and he also speaks English, but he also moved here when he was, like I said, 10 or 13 years old. So his actual vocabulary froze in place. So when he talks to people, he said he feels a little subconscious when he talks to people in Spanish because he doesn't have a dense vocabulary because it stopped. He stopped
Okay.
learning
Yeah.
new things when he was 10 or 13. So he's like, so to some people, they think it's weird because I'm talking to them like a child, like I'm a child. And I was like, that's a mind fuck right there. Cause
That's interesting though, because a similar thing is happening when I like meet friends in real life, and I mean we don't talk English with each other, obviously,
mhm.
but like I'm in conversations with them, and sometimes I have to stop because I can't think of the German word that I want to say. I can only think of the English word, and I can't translate it in my brain.
Yeah.
So I'm like I've became less eloquent in German by doing streaming, or hanging around on Twitch, and being entirely English or exclusively English.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess on a day to day basis, since you do quite a bit of streaming, I mean, you think that you probably speak way more English
Yeah,
than you do German
absolutely. Yeah,
anymore?
I even talk to myself in English during the day.
Wow.
Like when I walk around in the apartment and do stuff, clean or something.
Wow. That's kind of neat. Did you it's I know it's very different over in Europe because the one time I've been to Europe, we went to Spain, and I was dreading it because I don't speak any Spanish at all, and I was
Mm.
like, oh, this is gonna be fucking great. I look like I should. No, I don't. But we would go into shops and we'd go into places, and people were like really excited to find out that we only spoke English, and
Okay.
because they learned English in school, and so they were excited to get to use their English. Um, was that something? Did you just learn English in through grade school, or is that kind of more of a university thing?
I learned English in I think you would say high school,
High
like
school.
fifth grade
Hmm.
throughout 13,
Hmm.
13th grade, which I guess is because of the history of this country. Like if we think World War II and then the Allies and
Hmm.
Americans coming over. Um, so yeah, learned English. We learn English in school pretty early on, but it's very basic. So the real learning effect comes from, at least for me, from watching films mainly and listening to music, and like watching films in the original language. Like at some point in my life, I started, I think around like 16, 17 years old, I started watching films not with the dub versions anymore, but like in the original, but with English subtitles.
Okay.
So I would listen to it and I would read it at the same time, and that had a huge effect on my English.
Okay.
Yeah,
That makes sense. I mean, it's kind of a you if you don't use it, you lose it type of thing, right? Where it's like
exactly. Yeah,
the more you do it, because that's how we learn language growing up as a kid. It's just like you're communicating with your parents, you're communicating with other family members or friends and stuff like that, and you're just kind of like, eventually things just start making sense. You don't. I think a lot of people get stuck, and this can be with anything even outside of language. A lot of people kind of get stuck on this. Look at all this shit I have to learn. Like, there's no way I can learn it all at once. It's like, no one learns it all at once. Like, it's just there's only there's only a time where you only know 5 words as a kid. It's like that's where you start, and you just kind of build it up. So I think that probably holds a lot of people back, and that, like, as far as learning a new language, and as you get older, there's just more shit going on. So, and I'm not going to find anybody on a regular basis to speak Spanish with. So when do I get to practice that?
yeah. It really is the best when you start as early as you can. I remember good friends of my parents.
Mhm.
Excuse me. Good friends of my parents were it was a couple, and the guy was from Germany and was actually a teacher, like a German teacher, and the woman was like his wife was from England,
Mm.
and they have 2 children, 2 daughters, and they started from the beginning. The mother would talk English with them, and the father would talk German with them, and I got to know them. I don't know. I think the oldest daughter was around maybe 10, 11 years old or something when I
Mm.
met them for the first time, and she could speak fluently German and fluently English, and it blew my mind just
Yeah.
seeing like this 10-year-old girl is speaking 2 languages fluently, and that's really crazy. So yeah,
Yeah.
the earlier the better.
Yeah, I told you I was we were, when we were having that discussion in your chat, I was talking about one of my siblings, my sister. She she learned she learned German mostly in high school, but she picked up on it really really well. And we had a German exchange student, and she went over to Germany for her part of her last year of high school as an exchange student, and it's weird because when I do hear her, when she will rarely talk German with someone she knows, it's just kind of like it still sounds weird because it's still my sister's voice that
Yeah.
I'm used to hearing say English, So it's interesting, and we were talking about how a person that learns it later, like you were saying, like English speakers tend to round words off,
Yeah.
whereas in German you guys tend to, what did you say, like edge it out more so?
Yeah, our language is more like it has more edges. Or
Mhm.
at least that's the way I perceive it. Like
Yeah.
whenever I hear, let's say, an American that can speak fluently German,
Mm.
I'm pretty sure I could hear it that they are actually American
Yeah.
and they're just speaking German because it's a certain tone. It's almost like when someone listens to me and says, "Yeah, I can hear your German accent." That's kind of like what it is.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
It's
just,
kind
the other way around, obviously.
Yeah, we love to shorten words. I mean,
Yeah.
we love, like, so instead of rounding off, we like to rounding off. It's like it's more of a just dropping things off. And me being from the southern United States, it's like a whole nother level of that too, where it's
Yeah.
you're combining words. It gets weird. It gets really weird. Um, I was trying to think there. I was reading an article the other day, because you brought up college a couple times, and this is in North America. Um, I was reading an article in the Atlantic by Ian Bogost, I think is how he says it, but the name of the article was "America Will Sacrifice Anything for the College Experience." Um, and they're basically relating it to COVID and coronavirus and all that stuff, and how we've had to change kind of the way we do things in order to just kind of have some semblance of whatever we can do normal shit out in the world.
Mm.
Um, and a lot of what's changed with grade school and with colleges and stuff like that is the fact that a lot of it turned into more of distance learning. It turned into a lot more online stuff. Um, and he was basically talking about how it kind of brought to light, and it was kind of a shocker for parents and students, and more so for the colleges, where it's like the education alone isn't worth the price tag, because they're not getting the experiences that come along with that education. And it's all stuff. He kind of went over all this stuff that had nothing to really do um, with the actual education part. It's like you don't get that time of hanging out, with a lot of people that you don't know. Like there's so many less people you get to meet now because there's so many less people going to campus, or so many, so it's kind of talking about how the experience, which is made a big deal out of, like he kind of talks about how um in America, like college is sold as this whole package experience, almost like this 4-year educational vacation, you know,
Yeah.
where you get away from the parents, you get away from, you're on your own for the first time, kind of, and it's weird. Like I, I've never really talked to, I guess I've never really talked about it to someone who went to university in Europe or in Germany even. Um, is it is it still like, is it kind of packaged like that there, or is it a little more straightforward? No, I'm here to learn and then I'm out of here.
Um, I'd say it is kind of packaged that way too.
Mhm.
Before I went to university, I couldn't wait because of that packaging, because people were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna be on our own for the first time. We're gonna have the college experience. We're gonna hang out on campus. We're gonna meet new people. We're gonna take drugs. We're gonna drink alcohol. We're gonna learn all this cool stuff, and we can." And the biggest thing for me, at least, was I can finally decide what I want to learn.
Mhm.
Like, instead of going to school and then you have to do this, you have biology, you have math, you have English, and all of that stuff, and you have to do these things and you have to learn them, and then you have to write exams. But in college, it would be the way that you decide what you want to learn and what you're interested in and stuff like that. So that was like the biggest draw for me in the beginning. Therefore, I would say, yeah, it's absolutely packaged that way too. But then you go to university and you start realizing, I mean, yeah, you have the campus, you do get to know other people, and you are kind of like on your own, obviously, depending on where you go to. But I moved as far away as I could and was on my own. But when it comes to the education itself, it's not as free as I imagined it.
Mhm.
Like you still decide, but there is still some force in there. Like you have to, for example, I decided to go with modern history was the official term of my major,
Mhm.
but I still had to go and do a course on ancient history, for example, and
Sure.
learn about ancient Greek, and stuff like that.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah, it's gonna be kind of weird to see how it kind of changes, because I've already gone through all that, so I'm kind of in that. All right, well now I have a career, and I work toward paying my own bills and doing my own thing here. So there's been a lot of talk, amongst me and my friends, especially people who have kids and are going to have kids. Like it's like how probably more so people who have kids right now, who have to kind of worry about how something like the pandemic is going to affect their the socialization of their kid, because
yeah,
there's not the same type of, we can't just go to the playground and play with other kids, it's
yeah,
not the same. So there's kind of a similar, a lot of people are looking into how that also affects the college experience, and because you're just learning things in a different way than you would have if you were just able to just show up and just go to class. Because I mean, now you're talking about classes that were full of like 30, 40 people. I mean, they might be 10 or 15 now.
yeah.
It's really weird. It's a really weird change. It feels like a ghost town, honestly.
So
Um,
that article that you were talking about, are they making a case now that college, or education, should not be as expensive because they are forced to take away that experience, that college experience?
in a way, yes, because um, in a way they are trying to justify that, because yeah, I mean, think about the fact that all these buildings, all the the staff needed to staff the building, stuff like that aren't needed as much anymore. So
Okay.
in theory, the cost should be going down as far as to the school, the cost of the school, because they don't have nearly the amount of resources they needed before to take care of a full campus of people. Um, the university here is gigantic. Like if the university wasn't here, we would just be a tiny little town of nothing really. Like
Mm.
it'd be just a normal little town. But the university brings so many people from around the world. It really does help. I'm kind of glad I grew up here because the it does help you just kind of get to know other cultures, um, and to just meet people that aren't even like it doesn't even have to be from outside of the country. Just meet people from California just because they moved here to go to college instead of staying in California. You just get exposed to a lot more people, and it, unfortunately, a lot of the bigger colleges here run very similar to a corporation where it's we're going to expand, because they're kind of counting on, well, we got this much money this year in tuition, so next year we're definitely going to get this much. So let's go ahead and build that building. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so it's everything's kind of on a weird hold as far as that goes, but there's still like there's a lot of people who have a problem with the fact that, well, now I'm sitting at home all day on a computer and I see that my teacher is sitting at home on her computer teaching me this stuff. So why am I paying a facility fee? Like, it's kind of bringing to light a lot of that stuff where people are just kind of like, I'm not getting the same experience that I would get for this price tag. I'm
Yeah.
also just staying home now. So I don't know.
On top of that, I don't know where I read that, but I read about someone who he was just complaining about how he doesn't really get shit done by sitting at home and trying to like do homework or learn things because he's at home, and that's usually like not a space where you would learn a lot of things,
Yeah.
especially like in a university relation as well. Like I remember myself when I went to university, I would never sit in my apartment and learn. I would always go to the library and with my pack up my laptop, go to the library, and just sit there for like hours upon hours and just learn away, because kind of you need to separate those spaces. So when you come home, you can relax, you can chill, and then when you go into, I don't know, the college itself or or the library or whatever, your brain kind of like flips that switch and
Y-
knows, okay, and now it's the time to do some work.
Yeah.
And people are struggling. I think at least a lot of people are struggling with that fact that they have to now sit at home and do all of this stuff, especially when they have to sit at the same computer they play video games and listen to a professor like via Skype or however it works these
Hmm.
days. Talk about something. I guess that fucks with your brain.
Yeah, it has to. I mean, it's just kind of like there's two different types of people, two different types of workout people. Like there's people that can work out at home, no problem. And then there's people that have to go to a gym. Like
Yeah,
they cannot bring themselves to do, working out at home, or even to talk about what we were talking about earlier. You didn't start really developing and evolving in your drumming until you actually got out of the basement and
exactly. Yeah.
and started playing with other people. There's just a different mindset. Like it's too easy for me. Like it's too easy for me to go and lay down on the couch than to sit here and do something boring. It's like
Yeah.
if I'm supposed to work. Thankfully, I don't really have a problem with the working from home thing. But I did have like the early days when I was still in college, the early days of online learning really sucked. I was like, I would much rather be in a classroom because I feel like it was kind of set up like a message board where it's like, oh, post your questions here and I'll answer them at some point. And it's like, it's kind of nice to have that instant feedback of like, no, I've got a question now so I can finish what I'm doing kind of thing.
Mm.
Um, Before we moved back to where we're living now, we lived in Atlanta, and my wife had a job that was she mainly worked from home, and the rest of her stuff was kind of on the road doing inspection type stuff, and it kind of drove her a little crazy just because we were living in a pretty like it's a 1 bedroom apartment, but it had a good amount of like living space, um but she didn't have an office per se. She just kind of had like the dining room was kind of turned into like a makeshift office. So when she got off work, she was still technically like in her office, like it was still there, like just to our left while we're watching TV, and it was like really stressful for her because she she wasn't able to. She never felt like she got away from work because it was always just kind of sitting there waiting on her, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm sure there's people struggling with that at that are in college right now because a lot of people will be like that are concerned will be like why are people showing up on campus. And while I do still I'm as careful as I can be with what's going on now, I understand why some people still show up even though they have the option to stay at home and learn because it puts you in a different mindset to be sitting at a desk looking at a whiteboard, like while the professor is explaining things to you in person. So I can't get mad at people who still want to do that. But I
Yeah.
also
Is it voluntarily for college students to go in or not
from what
currently?
I understand, at least here where I'm at, in order to be in compliance with whatever the state is saying, there has to be a certain percentage of available in-person class time if students want it.
Okay.
So they can, like, by all rights, stay at home and do all of their stuff through Zoom, and submit all their stuff remotely. But there's still a good amount that still show up. I'm on a side of campus that doesn't really have all the essential stuff that everyone has to do. Like it's more of the in-depth major side of things that the classrooms are a little more full, like your English and biology, which I'm sure that's weird because how are you going to do a lab when you don't have a lab at home, kind of thing?
Yeah.
If you're doing like chemistry or something like that. Um, but yeah, from what I understand, it's a little bit of a choice. So you could be at home if you wanted to, or you could be there, which is fortunate. But it gets weird when so they've got maximum occupancies on all the rooms, right? So what if the maximum occupancy is 10 and you got 12 kids that want to show up? I don't know how they deal with that. I have no clue.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. It's been a very fucking weird year, man.
It's difficult, yeah.
It's very difficult, and people just seem like very. It's been, and that's probably something that contributes a lot to my inability to focus and stuff like that. There's just all this other stuff running in the background, that you're just kind of like, well, now when I go to the store, I can't just go to the store and go get something. I have to like, all right, do I have my mask? What did I touch? Come home. Do I just fully take a
Yeah.
shower? It's all this weird stuff. You'd think of who touched the product before I picked it up off the shelf, kind of shit. So it's just everything's
Yeah,
got a new
I'm
step to
guessing.
add to it.
I'm also guessing it's a bit more crazy for you over there than it is for me over here, folks. Like I still have to pick up my mask and wear my mask when I go, grocery shopping or something.
Mm,
But I'm not really in that mindset when I'm in the shop. Who touched that toast that I'm about to grab out of the shelf right now?
mm.
I don't know. Maybe
Y-
I'm just blending it out, or it's just not as crazy as it seems to be in America currently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I,
can't really say because I'm not really reading any news,
mhm.
to be honest with you. So I don't really know how the exact situation here is. We still have also like maximum, there's only a certain amount of people allowed in the shop, and you have to wear your mask. But beyond that, you don't really notice too much. Like it's kind of like business as usual, just with these few adjustments,
It, which
at least over
wouldn't,
here.
I mean, we have those guidelines here, but you have a lot of people who are just kind of like, you can't tell me what to do, kind of.
Yeah, that's the big difference, I'd
That's
say.
a huge difference, and it sucks because like I'll show up to, I got a place that I like to get coffee from, and I'll stop there on the way to work some mornings, and go in there, and sometimes I'm the only one in there. Last time I went in there were two people in line without a mask on, just chilling. One was sneezing, one was just sneezing, and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like it's so
That's
stressful.
something. I can't wrap my head around. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It and that's probably what lends itself a little more into my thinking of like who touched this, who was around this, because you'll walk into a store and while 85-90% of people have a mask on, you still have that 10 to 15 that don't, and they're still
That
just
makes
walking
sense. Yeah.
around. And you're just kind of like, well, what are you doing? Like, do
What
you
if you catch that one toast that the one dickhead touched, who
yeah,
just sneezed in his hand right before he touched it?
yeah, and that's
Yeah, I get that.
it sucks, man. It's really not a fun time as far as that goes. But I don't want to make it out like I'm like constantly walking around like turning the light switch on and off 5 times and being hype. It's just you're just a little more. There's just a couple more steps to everything right now, and it's just kind of like you're just wanting to be a little more careful, and it's not a case of like it's not a case of being it is a case of being nervous that you might get it, but it's also a case of like you're doing it to I'm doing it also to be courteous to the people who have to be at that store working all day, you know. Like I want to reduce the chance as much because that person needs to work there to make their money, to make, pay
Yeah.
their bills and stuff, and they have to wear a mask all day. And it's just kind of like it's only I can for the 10 minutes I'm in the store I can put a mask on, and then there's just some people who are just kind of like, I'm not doing it. I'm going in. I'm not doing it. Like,
Yeah,
all right.
that's the crazy thing, because it really is, most or the majority of it, it really is that you looking out for other people
Mm-hmm.
rather than for yourself. And that, that there's a group of people or a lot of people out there who just don't give a fuck
Yeah.
is kind of worrying.
I'm related to some of them, and it sucks. It really sucks. We've discussed it before, when just chatting with each other,
Yeah.
but it's just kind of like it's amazing because you're just kind of like, well, how are you not seeing this? Like, how are you not putting these two things together? Because growing up, you seemed like you had your shit together, and now you're just showing your ass. Um, there was a really good article the other day, um, about because the Borat movie was coming out. It just came out last night. And we watched it. It's really we actually watched the original and then we watched the new one, and it's a very interesting look, at at society. And I've always loved how Sacha Baron Cohen's able to do that, where it's like he's doing this ridiculous thing, but he's also showing you just how ridiculous real people are
Yeah.
about their mentalities. Well, this guy was writing an article about Borat, and he was kind of making this comparison that basically political extremists are doing their rendition of Borat. Like they're kind of doing this thing where it's like, no, I'm this character playing out this thing where I'm gonna walk around with no mask on and with my gun on my shoulder, and that's just my thing, and I'm gonna wear whatever shirt that I'm affiliated with politically, and I'm gonna wear that as my badge of who I am. Um, and it's just kind of like I just remember, and maybe I just never paid attention, but there was just such a large amount of time growing up where your your politics didn't really also determine what your personality was, and I think a lot of people have merged those two things together now.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Like it's kind of astounding. I was almost kind of wondering like as far as like election time goes, I don't know how much you even pay attention to it where you're at, but like the astounding amount of mail we get, it's just like borderline. I mean, I even say borderline when but it's straight up propaganda on some cases. In some cases, it's just like, hey, vote for me. This is what I'm up for. And then you get like a bill, a handbill from the same promoting the same person, but it's like so and so's radical agenda is going to kill your children, kind of thing. Like
Oh
it's
God, yeah.
I wish I had started collecting it when it all started rolling in, but like about a month, about the beginning of last month, I was like, we're about a month away from the election. I'm just gonna hold on to every piece of like the weird, not so much like the informational stuff that's like, oh, okay, well this is this person's policies, but like the weird propaganda stuff. I have like I'm gonna take a picture of all of it when the election's done. It is astounding how much I have. It's a ridiculous amount. Like we get at least 3 pieces a day in the mail.
That's crazy, man.
I
Yeah,
don't.
I'm watching it. Like, I'm not like looking at it every day or something,
Hmm.
but it is interesting to me because it's so different. It always has been so different, like how it works with specifically like election day and how uh, your candidates prepare for it and the discussions and stuff. It's almost like if you look at it from my perspective, from like a European perspective, it's almost like reality TV. Like you could show someone who has no idea about anything, you could show that to someone and they would think it's fake. Like that's like reality TV that's filmed, and those are actors.
Yeah.
What they see currently, because like, I was watching a little bit of the first debate. I didn't watch the second one yet. I heard they had a mute button on the second one,
First time in history. Yeah. First time in history.
and I was watching the first one, and I just couldn't believe it, man. I just could not believe the audacity. Sometimes
It's rough.
insane.
It's stressful, and both sides eat it up, and it just I stay mad at both sides. Honestly, it's not.
Yeah,
There's no one side is incredibly good at towing the line regardless of what's happening. The other side is incredibly good at eating itself. Um, when things are when you get people in place that are actually trying to do something good, they're like, well, didn't you one time say this one thing? So let's just tear this person down for something they said like 15 years ago or something they voted
yeah,
for. It's it's kind of rough. It would be too. I couldn't see being a politician like because you couldn't just be frank and just talk about what's on your mind because how is this person going to take it? Is this in line with what my party says? Like it just feels so stressful. It's stressful to watch. It's stressful to just be here. And I've been trying to take this kind of attitude of, look, man, it doesn't really matter what anyone says or what anyone, as far as the people that are voters, right? You can. Most people have their mind made up. You're not going to change their mind. So just show the fuck up at the voting booth and vote. That's really all you can do. Um, all the other stuff is just arguing for the sake of arguing. Like it's a lot of the reason why. I mean, there's several reasons why you should pull away from Facebook, but there's a big it's a big reason why I don't even look at that anymore because it's just kind of like, what's the point? It's just people arguing about shit that they're not going to change each other's minds about. So
yeah.
it's kind of interesting.
I can't even imagine like living in it too. Like not only just seeing it, but like living in it too, because it affects you. It
Mhm,
doesn't really affect me. Maybe passively it will affect me on some level,
mhm.
but not as much as it affects you.
Yeah. I was talking to the wife about it last night. It's an amazing amount of people sticking their nose in other people's business. It's just
Yeah.
it's a bunch of people who get like really just can't help but give a shit who someone marries or what someone does with their body and what someone wants to, it just comes down to these weird little cults. Like they're all just little mini cults and it's just like, ugh, can we just go to work, come home, watch the TV shows we want to watch, marry who we want to marry and, go about our business.
No, man, I gotta complain about the other side on Twitter.
The other side's tearing apart the idea of family.
Everyone, everyone has to live their life like I am.
I I I can't. I just it's so bad. um I know we've been going about 2 hours. Do you have a little more time for questions?
Yeah, sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
I got some people that asked some questions and then we can start wrapping up. Um I don't know how relevant this would be to you, but Rocket Robo Bear wanted to know, do you have a favorite Halloween or a favorite Halloween memory or is Halloween even a thing that you think about?
Not really, no.
No? Okay.
It's Halloween was never. It's crazy. When I grew up, Halloween was here in Germany not a thing at all.
Mm.
Like we had Halloween and it would be a holiday, but it would never be like, oh, let's go dress up in a costume and go from door to door as children, go from door to door and get some candy from people. That was never a thing. It started to become a thing though when I was already in my teenage years, and when I was a teen, I'm not dressing up anymore and go from door to door to get some candy.
Yeah.
So I would always just treat it as like a holiday, I guess.
Hmm.
But nothing more. The only thing is that my birthday is around that time. Like my birthday is October 30th, and
Okay.
Halloween is the day after. So that would be like the only connection
All
that I
Hallows
kind of
Eve.
have.
Nice. All
Right.
Hallows Eve. Yeah. Your birthday. Interesting. Well, happy early birthday. Uh,
Thank you.
yeah, I would say it probably has a lot to do with the internet and just people seeing,
Yeah.
oh, look, people do this in other places. Let's do it here. And companies probably figure out a way to make money off of it. So, um,
Absolutely.
let's see what else.
It's like Valentine's Day.
Yeah. Oh God, shoot me in the face, please. Curdy asks, what kind of phone do you have?
I have a flip phone.
Nice.
I have a Samsung flip phone. I don't know the exact model, but yeah, it's an old one, and I have it for at least 10 years, and it's still holding strong, man.
There you go. Nice. So, is the aversion to smartphones similar to just like I want to stay as fucking unattached from shit as possible?
Yeah,
Okay.
mainly. Mainly. First of all, I don't need it. I don't think I need it.
Sure.
I don't need a smartphone. I don't need to be online at any given minute of the day.
Yeah.
And secondly, I also don't want to be online at any given minute of the day. Like I know I want to know I can detach myself from it when I want to. That is by, shutting off the PC, obviously.
Right, right. Yeah, it's interesting like I've found in the past couple of years I've really just not that I leave my phone, behind a lot, but I just don't I do a lot of catch up on my phone or a lot of just like similar stuff that I would do online, but like I'm not constantly checking my phone like I used to. Um,
Yeah.
I do a lot of like, oh, what did I miss in this chat? Like I go through and I catch up on what people have said, but there are a lot of people who are just like constantly staring at their phones, and it's just so
Constantly,
weird,
yeah.
so weird.
I have friends who like you can't catch them for 10 seconds straight without them looking at their phone.
Yeah,
And I mean, it kills any sort of conversation. When I think back, I don't want to be that guy. Oh, back in the day where everything was better. But when I think back, we would like go outside and we would just walk around for 5 hours in the city and just talk, and no one would whip out their phone or something, or anything like that.
yeah.
These days, you sit around the table and everyone is just staring at their phone all the time. The phones are on the table too at all times because you can't miss it when you get an email or whatever, or a message.
Hmm.
It's very different nowadays.
Yeah, the notification sounds like the people like the phantom vibrate where people think their phone's gone off, so they
Yeah,
check it. Like
exactly.
it is really it is really
It's almost
odd.
like smoking, like, or an addiction in general,
Yeah,
because scientists do say that when you get a notification on your smartphone, it releases endorphins
yeah,
in your system.
like dopamine or something like that,
Yeah,
which is insane, and that's actually the art of what a notification looks like, what it sounds like, is something that's
yes,
heavily studied by companies to where it's like what's going to be a pleasing tone to hear, that someone's going to be like,
exactly.
ooh, something that pierces. I don't know if you've heard the Facebook Messenger ping that happens when someone gets a message, but it's very distinct and it's very sharp. Um, and being an audio person, I've always found it interesting, like what people go with as far as like their tone goes, that kind of like snaps them out of whatever they're doing. Like, ooh, I got a message. Um,
Yeah.
I my phone stays largely on vibrate and pretty much it stays a lot more untouched than it used to. But yeah, I try to make it a point to, even like if I'm going out to dinner with the wife or if we're gonna be doing a movie or something like that, I try my best to just leave the phone in another room or just throw it in like the glove box of the car and not even worry about it.
Mm.
Um, but then you have the people who are like, but what if something happens and someone's doing something and you need to call the cops? I'm like, well, maybe they'll, I don't know. I'll figure it out.
Yeah,
I'll,
to ask the next person if you can use their phone or something
right.
like that.
I'll take the other 15 phones that are in the room with me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's what I always thought. That's why I always thought it was cool that Dave Chappelle, he locks up people's smartphones at his shows.
mm,
Like they have to do it. They have to put it in a zip bag, and you know can't take it out until the show's over. Obviously.
we actually experienced that with Kevin Hart. We went and saw.
Yeah.
We happened upon a Kevin Hart show. He was just doing this before the pandemic hit, like probably a month or two before. He started doing. He was filming a movie here in Atlanta, and there's a small comedy club called the Laughing Skull, and he kind of took up residency there, and he was doing these small shows, working on new material, um, up in front of like I don't know 50 people at a time.
Mm.
And so we went. We happened to get tickets to one of the nights, and they made you put your phones in these like these bags that are they're kind of like sealed like security tags are on clothes, you know,
Mm.
where these little pins like snap into place, and then at the end of the show, as you're going out, they tap the bag and it unlocks the
Oh,
magnet or
okay.
whatever. And so it's really kind of cool to see when people do that because I'm a huge stand up comedy fan anyway. So like whatever I can do to kind of help not ruin their bits because a lot of people like to record shit on their phone. Like I mean I know you're a concert person.
Yeah,
I cannot
I
stand
know what you're gonna say.
I cannot stand it. One of the last so there's this venue in Atlanta called the Masquerade. It's a really I've seen so many concerts there. It's an old mill that they turned. It's like a 3-level mill that they had just turned into a venue. They basically turned it to heaven, hell, and purgatory, and they would always have like the harder concerts were always up in heaven. I don't know why, but it was just like the better layout. One was more of a like an event room, and the other one was like kind of more like a. They'd have more like EDM type like rave shows
Mm.
there. Anyway, so we would go there all the time, and they finally started shutting down because a lot of real estate investors have started turning over a lot of those rougher parts of Atlanta and making them into high rises and all this shit. So kind of just scrubbing the character out of the place. But one of the last shows I went to there was they had set up a little amphitheater back behind the Masquerade, and it was Faith No More with Mike Patton, which fucking amazing, such a good show. But I had to actually almost I was ready to fight this guy, but thankfully he just kind of got out of the way. But he was standing in front of me with his arms up, holding
Oh, no.
a huge smartphone, recording the entire thing, and I was just like, the first song when they came out, I was like, all right, look, he's excited to see Faith No More. Maybe he just wants to record the first couple minutes. I'll give him a chance. By the time song 2 was almost over, I was like, dude, you're gonna have to stand behind me, or we're gonna have a problem. Like it was that, and it's just so different, man. It
And what are
really
you
is.
getting out of that? Is my question.
Who's watching it? No one.
Yeah,
Not even you. You're not even
I
watching it.
re-
I don't
I
know.
really don't know. But yeah, I was watching Tool live in Zurich,
Mhm.
I think a year ago or so.
Yeah.
And they were like they didn't lock up people's phones, but they just constantly kept remind before the show. They constantly kept reminding, like through the speaker system, please be aware, don't put out your phones, and just keep your phones in your pockets and don't whip them out and stuff like that. And then they would play their show, and then before the last song, Maynard would actually say to the crowd, "All right, here's the time you've all been waiting for. You're now allowed to whip out your phones, and you can record this last song that we're gonna play for you," which was Push It, and not Push It, Stinkfist,
Yeah.
is what they were playing. And you would think in such a situation, because a lot of people were respectful of that. Like you did see the occasional phone here and there,
Hmm.
but mostly people would just enjoy the show. You would think that after like 1.5 hours, people wouldn't give a shit about that and would just enjoy the last song, just like they enjoyed the other 90 minutes of the show.
Hmm.
But as soon as he said it, like 70% of the entire crowd was whipping out their smartphones and would just record that entire last track, and just insane.
You gotta wonder how much of that too is the repeated denial, like the repeated like reminding of you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do this, and then when like the front man of the band says, "Okay, you can do this," like
Like a
how
parental thing.
right? It's almost like a well, maybe they're about to do something amazing, and he's giving me permission to I don't know,
Okay,
like it's like works like a weird reverse psychology type situation.
maybe.
Yeah, but man, it drives me crazy. But I'm a big fan of sitting down and actually, like you said, it can ruin conversations, and that's why I really do enjoy podcasting and streaming because I don't. I mean, if unless I'm really waiting on something, some sort of confirmation from something or someone calling me about something important, my phone right now is on the floor, like under my
Mm.
desk because it'll still vibrate while I'm recording and it drives me crazy. Um, but yeah, I'm just kind of like, just have a fucking conversation. Like I had this constant daydream, like about opening up a place that's like a pub or a tavern or something like that, where you had to relinquish your phone or put it in like one of those bags, where it's like, no,
That'd
you
be
need to
cool.
have conversation. Have it actually be you sitting across the table and having a conversation with someone, whether you knew them or not. Like, because that's some of my favorite shit. Like something that sticks out in my head is one of my favorite moments from the past couple of years, just in in conversating with people that I didn't know that well, was after I think it might have been TwitchCon last year. Um,
Mm.
I got so me and my friend that went, his flight was an hour or two earlier than mine, but I was like, well, I'm just gonna go ahead and go to the airport with you. I ended up meeting this guy while I was waiting. I was grabbing a beer at the terminal, and I ended up meeting this guy who was a retired. I think he was like a retired U.S. Marine, Mexican dude, and he moved to Mexico. He's like living in this small town in Mexico, like basically being a cowboy, teaching, tending a farm and teaching people to ride horses and stuff like that. And he was just like crazy dude. Like he was in the first go around of like Desert Storm, like the war in Iraq, the first time around with
Mm.
the first Bush. Um, and it was a really cool conversation. This other guy came and joined us from Arizona, and like it was just like, holy shit, this is what I enjoy. Just like getting to know people and getting to kind of prod them, like, about what it's like, and then answering their questions and stuff like that. Cause they were both clearly way older than me. They probably at least 20 years older than me, maybe 30. Um, I don't know, that kind of stuff is just cool to me. Like just to have conversation and get to know people. And I feel like it's easy to
Yeah,
miss those opportunities if you are
everyone
distracted.
has a crazy story, right?
Mm,
Like
absolutely.
if you just make that leap and let a conversation happen,
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
you
Like
never
it's
know.
in well, we've all been in that situation where it's like, okay, well now you're on your phone, so I don't even know if you heard what I said. It's like fuck.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Seidel wanted to know if you actually like fudge, proper fudge, like the food fudge.
I have to be honest, I don't even know if I ever had proper fudge. I mean, I had chocolate before,
Yeah.
but as far as I can tell from what people told me, it's not really just chocolate.
Yeah, it's like an in between. Like if you took the consistency of a chocolate bar and the consistency of brownies and mixed them, so it's a little bit soft, but it's
Okay.
not quite cakey like a brownie. And it's probably about as thick as a piece of brownie.
Okay. I might have had something similar before.
It's really
But
fucking
yeah,
sweet, really sweet.
sure. I mean, I can't probably can't eat too much of it because too much chocolate is just that makes me sick to the stomach, but it's not bad.
Simply Allie asks, do you ever plan to do a face reveal, or is that just kind of a thing for you? And you're just not going to do that.
It's not written yet. I haven't decided that.
Hmm.
I am warming up to the idea of revealing a little bit more. Like if you would have asked me 2 years ago if I would ever like incorporate a webcam into into my stream, no matter how it would look like, just a webcam. If you would just use the word webcam, I would immediately say no
Hmm.
because just this setup that I have right now, it would make me paranoid that the camera would, just slip off the table and land on its back and just show me for like 2 seconds. I would be too paranoid to use it. So I would never do that. But I am like within the last year or so, or within the year of 2020,
Mm.
I am kind of like warming up a little bit more to the idea of becoming a little bit more tangible as a person. So I wouldn't say yes or no.
Okay.
It's just, I don't know yet. I haven't decided yet. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I like we said before, there's something about being able to do it without it. It's just really cool to me. So, I mean,
Yeah.
uh,
I have
and-
this cool. I have this cool scene in my head that I would really like to get a proper DSLR camera, like the one that you used before on your show, something like that,
mhm.
and set it up properly behind me, so it would show my entire, basically my entire working place with my monitors and stuff, and would show me from the back, sitting in my chair. That
Mm.
would be cool if I could. So I don't. Have you ever watched a guy called Silent Sentry on Twitch?
No.
He's like a role. He does a lot of role play. He also did a little bit of DVD, but he has a very cool camera setup, and it's essentially a top-down view on him and his setup in like he has a setup in a tiny room, and it's like it's filling out basically the entire room, and he has this camera from the top down at him, and
Almost
it
like
looks so fucking
surveillance.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It looks so fucking cool. I would love to do something like that at some point, maybe.
Man, it'd be great to find like a shitty old like, just an actual security camera from like an old system that you could hook up.
Like a
Just make it look,
CCTV.
yeah, just like old CCTV. Yeah. That'd be kind of neat. But I guess you can make a camera look like anything now with a filter or something like that. You can make it look like it's inside of a dirty like
Yes, yeah.
plastic dome or something like that. Um, let's see. She had a couple of follow-up questions. Would you? All right. This led to a way longer discussion than it needed to be on my channel when she asked it. But would you fight one 100-foot duck or 100 1-foot ducks?
What is 1 foot in centimeters?
It's about. Now you're gonna make me look. I'm that dumb. That's how dumb. Let's see.
Imperial system, man.
Yeah, I know. We're wonderful here. It's about 30 centimeters.
So 130 centimeter ducks,
Mm-hmm.
or what was the other one?
100-foot ducks. So that'd be what is
3 meters. Or no, 30 meters?
3,000 centimeters. I don't know, whatever that is.
3,000 centimeters is 30 meters.
Yeah, 30 meters. Yeah, 30.48 meters.
The 30 centimeter ducks.
Yeah.
130 centimeter ducks, for sure.
Yeah. All you gotta do is start
Just,
booting them, right?
yeah, just step on them.
So what that led to was us talking about how many toddlers we thought we could take. Like if they were being sent at us in waves, right? In constant waves. How many toddlers could you take out? Like we're talking about, and their sole purpose is to just immobilize you, but you do whatever you can to get away from it. And so that led to like literally an hour and a half conversation.
Oh my God.
And at some point ended up being my wife coming in and telling me I was stupid because there's no way I could take on that many toddlers. I was like 20 to 30, I could do it. She goes, "Fuck you, you're too out of shape. You're 37, you're dumb." So it's interesting. Okay. So the small ducks, 101-foot ducks. Okay. And then her last question was, what do you do when you're not streaming?
Watch streams, listen to music, make music, watch films.
All right.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean that's
not really much going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much what I'm doing. Like, all right, well, I think that's what a lot of us are doing, to be honest. It's not like you can just go out and do shit right now
Yeah.
on a normal basis. Let's see. Amanda asked, this is the last question. Amanda asked, what are you asking for Christmas? And I was like, are you asking Fudge what he's asking for Christmas? She said, yes. I said, okay, I'll ask him.
Nothing. I never ask for anything. Every year, I get asked from family what I want, and I always say nothing. I don't want any. I don't like the idea of being gifted presents.
Yeah.
I like the idea of gifting because it makes me happy, making someone else happy.
Hmm.
But I find it rather awkward receiving gifts, which is kind of weird if you think about being on Twitch, you know, and
Yeah.
people basically gifting stuff to you. But it has always made me feel awkward. So my answer is always, I don't want anything. I don't need anything. Don't give me anything.
Yeah. There's a weird feeling of like, now I feel like in my brain, I'm like, well, now I owe you something. Like now I
Yeah,
feel like I need to even it out for some reason, even though a lot of people aren't expecting that, but you still kind of feel that way. Like when we got married, there was like, well, when are you doing a wedding registry? And we're like, do we have to do one? Because I really don't want. I mean, I'm a grown ass person. Like I really don't need you to give me anything. Like,
yeah.
um, but no, I get that. I get that for sure. Um, but yeah, that was it. Like, just I was wondering if people had some random questions, so they gave them to me.
Nice,
It's nice.
nice.
Let's see. We usually do a thing before we wrap up of what you're watching or what you suggest people watch that you're into lately. Do you have a movie, a TV show, anything you think people should be watching?
Let's see. A lot. I've been watching season 2 of The Boys
Oh yes,
very recently. That was the recent show that I've watched. That was kind of cool, I guess. But when it comes to suggestions, I would absolutely recommend each and everyone to watch a show called The Wire because it's the best TV show ever created.
I can absolutely agree with you on that. I love The Wire. I've
Yeah.
I've probably I need to start my like fifth or sixth watch through on it. I don't know how many times I've watched it at this point, but
I'm gonna start my second watch through
nice.
very soon, hopefully.
David Simon's fucking wonderful. Like he really is. Generation Kill is one of my favorite miniseries.
Yeah.
Done really well. I don't know if you ever. I think I asked you before. But did you ever watch The Corner? It was something that was like a precursor to The Wire. It was just like a little 6 episode, I think, miniseries that they
No,
did.
never seen it.
It's pretty good. Very very much along the same lines. Just from I think it's more so from a mother, if I remember correctly, it's a mother son perspective. In a Baltimore neighborhood, and I think
Okay.
it's what kind of led to The Wire being made. Um, it's really good, an HBO show as well. Yeah, I can't say enough nice things about The Wire. I can't tell you how many people like my friend Poteet pushed me to watch it. He actually one Christmas, speaking of Christmas presents, just out of the blue bought me the first season on DVD and was just like, "You need to
Nice.
watch this." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "I've got the other 4 seasons. You can borrow them from me. Just watch this and keep it." And that led to me being in love with it and probably spreading it to way more people than than probably wanted it. But they were all thankful once they got into it. Um,
I bet.
I've been watching a show on Hulu called Hellstrom. Um, not I think it just got released. Not this past Friday, but the Friday before, and it's really good. It's not the typical type of show that I I would enjoy on a normal basis, but there's something about it that describes me. So it's the main way I could describe it to people is if you've ever seen the show The Fringe, and Dexter and The Exorcist, if they were all kind of mushed together into one show, it's really well done. What are you whining about? Got a dog whining. But Hellstrom is actually pretty good. Super dark. I've also been watching another. Is it Hulu? There's so many streaming services. It's fucking stupid.
It says on Wikipedia that plays within the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, does it? I didn't even realize that.
Oh,
It does kind of have that Marvel feel to it, but it's not. It's pretty dark. It doesn't really. It doesn't really. While they have some powers, it doesn't feel like a comic book movie at all.
okay.
And then I've been watching. I'm trying to remember if it's. I think it's Hulu as well. It's called Monsterland, and it's just these 1 hour non-serialized stories that take place in different parts of the U.S. Where just they're kind of merging real life monsters, like people who are terrible people, and merging stories about monsters with them.
Hmm.
Um, It's pretty cool. It's really dark though. I wouldn't suggest being like planning on feeling great afterwards, if that makes any sense. Um,
I
but
like a
it's
good gut punch.
oh man, it is. It's a nice little gut punch. And what's great is it's kind of in that realm of Twilight Zone and Tales from the Crypt, where it's like they kind of got one person that, oh, I've seen that guy before. It's like kind of one of the characters, you know. They may not be like gigantic celebrities, but they're people you've seen in other movies and other TV shows. Are usually like their main focus of the character. So a little Black Mirror esque, but like if they were to not focus on technology, but more so like the fucked up side of humanity.
Okay. Did
It's pretty
you
good.
finish? Was it Lovecraftian Land or what was it
Oh,
called?
Lovecraft Country. Yes, we did.
Lovecraft Country.
Holy shit,
Would you
man.
recommend it?
Yes, 100%. The finale just
Okay.
wrapped up last week, and dude, the way they shot it, the acting, like it's excellent because they pretty much kind of like what I was talking about with Monsterland. They kind of like juxtapose, you know, Lovecraftian monsters, which can be terrifying, with, you know, human monsters. You know, because a lot of it takes place around the time of desegregation in the United States. So
Okay.
there's still a very much a racial angle to it. It's done really really well. Yeah, you'll enjoy it. And even just the cinematography of it. You're just kind of like the first episode. Like I couldn't I couldn't stop thinking about how beautiful the episode was for like 2 days after we watched it. Like I wanted to watch it immediately after it was over. I was like, let's watch it again because that could have been like one of the most beautiful shot episodes of TV I've ever seen.
Okay. Nice.
Um, the only other thing I got is, you know, if you're into that Borat thing, go watch the new Borat because it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I've been watching the first one, and I think when I watched it the first, oh, not the first time, when I watched it, I think I didn't really understand it. Like I didn't understand the comedy behind it,
Yeah.
like what he was actually doing while he was doing all that goofy stuff, like what he was exposing while he was doing it. But now that I have like an idea of it, I think I'm gonna have to check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting because we watched it, and after watching that led to me and the wife probably having like an hour or two long discussion just about all the shit that went on in that, and just
Yeah.
how fucked up it all is, because it just shines a light on some weird fucking people, and just on just very very much so, like if you look at it from the perspective of, he is really kind of fucking with the establishment in a way that they don't realize they're being fucked with or being
Mm.
exposed. So,
He had
um,
this show, didn't he?
Ali
Was it
G.
on Netflix? No, the it was relatively new. Came like I think like 2 years ago or something. I never watched it because I didn't.
Was it on? Let's see, Sasha
Was it
Baron.
Netflix or Hulu or some streaming site? It was like
Um,
he was doing interviews with senators and stuff. I believe
oh, The
something like
Spy.
that. The Spy. That
Yeah, I think it
could
was
be
called The
okay.
Spy. It was a TV miniseries. It was on Netflix, so it wasn't like
Netflix.
a
Okay.
on running thing. I think he did like 5 or 6. I do remember when that came out. I need to go back and watch it now. He's getting ready
Yeah,
to
I
be
was
in some movie
incredible.
that's gonna be. He's getting ready to be in some movie that is about like some court case, and he's doing like a serious role in it. So I don't know. I just saw a preview for it the other day, but yeah, the new Borat's really good, especially leading up to, like, the release time was kind of just perfect with the election being 2 weeks away. Um,
I
and
bet.
it's definitely good for a lot of people in this country to see it. Any country really, but this country in particular. Um, but yeah, so those are my things to watch. That and by the time probably I do another one, the election will have happened. So stop talking and go vote if you're in North America. Go fucking vote, because that's all you can do. I don't give a fuck who you're voting for. But just go do it and quit talking. That's all I can really say
Yeah.
about
Absolutely.
that. Absolutely.
And I'm from Germany.
Yeah, and I'm from Germany. Please go vote. Change the way the fucking news cycle works, please.
I can't look at it anymore.
I'm forced into hiding. Um, But I appreciate you being on, man. I really do.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
That was a good time. We'll have to do it again. You can
Absolutely.
check out Fudge on Twitch, twitch.tv/Fudge, and you can check out his music on Bandcamp, Spuntastic on Bandcamp. Give me just a second. I'll wrap up the show and I'll be back with you, buddy.
All right.
Falling down on the job here and looking for my buttons. Guys, thank you very much for being here for the show. Like I said, I'll have links for Fudge's stuff on lopezradio.com, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening. Take it easy.